What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode 47 of the Silver and Gold. I'm Josh.
And I'm Mike.
Mike, can you believe that we're already on episode 47?
I know. I was actually thinking earlier about man, we're almost halfway to 100.
Yeah. When I think of 47, I think honestly of bad memories because 47 isn't a great number for the 49ers because it reminds me of Super Bowl 47 that didn't go our way. But let's go on to some things that I think went the right way this weekend. Let's talk about the final battle of the Bay. Mike, how was your experience this weekend going to the final game where San Francisco was going to be traveling to Oakland in any sport?
Yeah, yeah. Unless in some, you know, post-apocalyptic future, Oakland gets another sports team. Um, no, I had a great time. Honestly, I mean, you and I texted about it later. It might have been the most fun, one of the most fun times I've ever had at the Coliseum. Period. I would
Yep.
even go as far to say it was the most fun I ever had at an A's game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and no offense to any of the past A's teams. Obviously, I had great love for that team uh, back when I thought, it was Oakland forever, right? Uh, lots of great games. But it was the fact that this was one of the few times, which I hate to say this was one of the few times that I ever tailgated at an A's game. Um, and I have before, but I don't know. Something about this one was just special. Just having our big group that we had there, seeing everybody, seeing some old friends like Julio,
Yeah.
uh, which that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But just having a good time, drinking some alcoholic beverages and eating some good burgers, and honestly enjoying a really good game. We got an extra inning out of it. Like
Yeah.
it's the final battle of the Bay that went to extra innings. Like they made it as dramatic as possible. It wasn't high scoring. It was a 1-1 tie going into the 10th inning, and then now they have the new rule where uh, even in the regular season, extra innings, there's a runner at second just to start. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, what was it? The first pitch? Okay. First off, like if I could show you my knees right now, they are sunburnt. Okay, like the side of my neck kind of burnt. I got burnt out there. Like I was not wise. I did not bring sunscreen, and I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
But in hindsight, I was like even during the game, like in the ninth inning, I was like, all right, like it's hot out here. Like I was getting sweaty. Just the heat was baking me. Like I was running out of waters. And then we go to extra innings, and I'm like, all right, I'm going down. I got to get in the shade.
Yeah.
And
Pia's brother also got pretty sunburned, pretty
yeah,
bad.
I was honestly wondering like who else got burnt out there because like Paulina got burnt for sure. Uh,
Real quick,
but
let me just cut in just to paint the picture for you guys. I asked Mike for his experience. Mike and I did watch the game together. There will be a video coming out uh, probably tomorrow, and I might even bunch this section of the pod into that video. I haven't decided yet, but yeah, Mike and I we were sitting together. Uh, we had my dad, my brother, my cousin, my girlfriend, her family. I wish I could have gotten them more in the video. You know what I mean? But they're just like I have a bunch of pictures, but I'm trying to like keep the video like a little bit more up to speed. And if you make it like a slideshow, it's I feel like it's it just kind of changes the tempo a little bit. So I just want to give a quick shout out again to to Pia's entire family. Thank you for helping us with the tailgate. I want to say thank you to my dad who brought his grill, to my brother who helped with the grilling. You know I love all you guys. Shout out to you guys because like Mike said, this was one of his only experiences tailgating at the Coliseum. Sadly, and I mean, it was just a great time. You know what I mean? Like, we did not get in time for the bobbleheads. You know, like I saw the bobbleheads cool, but they looked pretty cool, but it wasn't worth like one final like good tailgate at the Coliseum. And we have like a little bit of video that we took of Mike and I playing catch in the parking lot. It'll be featured on that video that's going to drop later this week. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just what I love too is I feel like tailgates at the Coliseum are like, they're just a little bit different because anybody can kind of feel welcome. Like I have never tailgated at a Giants game and I'm a Giants fan. You know what I mean? I don't know how the tailgating vibe is out there. I've seen tailgates at Niners, at the Niners. Those are crazy. Those are insane. But I think they designed the parking lot, I think specifically for that. There's a huge, passionate fan base. And I can't say the same about the A's right now, but I'm sure before, like when the A's were actually good and competitive and like loyal to the soil in Oakland, I'm sure the tailgates were, just like everybody was probably in that parking lot having a great time. I've had my fair share of I've had like maybe 2 or 3, pretty solid, decent tailgates, at the Coliseum, but it was good to get like I'd say one final one because I don't really have any plans to visit the Coliseum again before they leave. But in terms of the game, I would say the game itself, like it was a good game. It wasn't like the best game that I've ever seen at the Coliseum, but I'd say that might be the most fun that I've had at a baseball game, period. Because like I just want you to imagine we ended up getting like 22 people all buying tickets together in our section, and we had like the 2 front rows in our section. And so like it was just awesome to like I guess not have to worry about who's sitting around you because you're like surrounded by people who just like, interact with you on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Like I know it was your first time like meeting a couple people who came, but for the most part I feel like you knew a good chunk of who was there or you knew of, you know?
Yeah.
Um but
I would say the one person that we did have to worry about uh in relation to the seating arrangements was the fucking lady right behind me. In the video that you're gonna drop, you can hear her coughing. Like
oh,
the first like 4 innings, she was just coughing up a lung. I was like, like it wasn't that bad. It was just like, oh damn, like what's going on here? Like
mhm.
right there, but it wasn't bad. And then one other thing, not to go on a tangent here, but you were talking about like A's fans and like, you're sure that, or maybe you said you don't know if like A's fans would like always do tailgates and whatnot. I know that like there is a very specific, I wouldn't call it group, but like there are the diehard A's fans that like it did not matter if it was Tuesday at noon, they would be there probably tailgating every single time. Like I know that for a fact. And then I don't want to suggest that A's fans are fair weather fans,
They're not. They're not.
because they're not. They're not. I think
They've been
everything
put through
I
the
know,
ringer, honestly.
yes, I know that everything that has led to where the A's are now, and specifically their fans are now, is all very situational in their experience, right? And our experience, because it's for me too, right?
Yeah.
But I know that when the A's are good and they start heating up, like I remember, what was it, 2012 when they started getting good towards like, that 2015 season or maybe 2014,
It's
2013.
2014. 2014.
2014, like that range where they were like winning the AL West and like they were just killing it, right?
Yeah.
I remember when it was like they weren't that good, and all of a sudden it was like, whoa, they're getting a couple like they just won 7 games in a row,
Mhm.
and like we were in high school at the time, like you could feel it like just gradually getting stronger and stronger. Like dude, the A's might be back. The A's might be back. Like once they were back, it was like tailgates galore. I'm positive, you know.
Mhm.
And I would just
R
say last thing on that is just that's what sucks. And again, if you watch the video, you'll see us kind of react to this, but that's part of the reason, a part of the reason why it sucks that the A's are leaving, and why they're leaving. Because chances are wherever they go, there's not going to be tailgates like this again. Like I think like Coliseum style tailgating is not, it's a thing of the past. Like I went to a Pittsburgh Steelers game maybe 3 years ago now, 2 years ago, and they have tailgating, but like the parking area is very select. It's not massive. It's solid, but it's mostly parking garages, you know?
Mm.
Or it's really downtown and you're going to do a lot of walking. Like there were people walking from what would essentially in the Bay Area be the Bay Bridge. Like you could see people walking from across the Bay Bridge, which again, that's exaggerated, but still, like I remember looking across the river and be like, "Oh, damn, like they're walking from all the way over there, across these bridges over here. Select parking for tailgating. Awesome vibe, not nearly as much as the Oakland Coliseum can do.
Mhm.
Because the Coliseum has both sides on the south and north end. But and like you mentioned about the Giants, like they don't, I'd say the reason why Giants fans don't tailgate is because they don't have parking, right?
Yeah,
Or at least not accessible.
they used to have parking right across from the Cove. They completely removed most of that parking to build, I don't know, like I'm assuming they're like apartment buildings,
Right.
like really, really like kind of tall skyscraper. I don't know. I don't know what you would officially call those kind of apartment buildings, but housing in San Francisco. I'm assuming that's what it is. Um, and so now most of the parking is like they do have parking. We've parked in like kind of it's like a building. It's like a building for parking. It's not a parking garage, but it's
Mhm.
over there like I don't even know how to describe it besides like it's on the waterfront. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I don't know what it was used for before. Or I honestly don't know if it was part of the parking lot before. But they have that and then a little bit of, outdoor parking right there. And then there's a parking lot like maybe a 10 to 15-minute walk away from the stadium, and it's just I don't know if tailgating is even allowed over there because I don't see a lot of
That
people tailgating over there when I walk, when I walk along the Embarcadero all the way to Giants games. But I do know it's nice to like when you are tailgating to be able to just put everything away and walk straight inside the stadium.
yeah.
I feel like it's more inaccessible if you just have to walk a long way after that because you have to wrap everything up sooner. You have less time to tailgate because they open the parking lots at a certain time.
Right.
It just makes everything harder.
Yeah, I would just say the city is not very accessible, San Francisco, for doing stuff like that. Whereas, say, a site like Candlestick probably was.
Yeah.
But you have to have a whole site for that with parking, and that's kind of the problem. Is a lot of these stadiums now, like Allegiant, like they have tailgating, but it's even more select and confined than Pittsburgh. Like they're kind of taking that away, and it's more about just like, yeah, you can Uber here, like because the parking
Mhm.
is $80. So if you're not going to pay that, then just Uber here. That's
Mhm.
what it's really becoming. So, but
Yeah,
to get go ahead, go ahead.
what fans are really going to suffer from that when they get a new stadium?
I don't know.
Bills Mafia is going to suffer when they
Oh,
get that new stadium and they
yeah.
have
Well,
select parking and it's I
ass-
mean, unless
ass-
they construct it that
assuming
way.
right, assuming they don't have parking, maybe they'll make that a priority because they know their fans. Hopefully,
Mhm.
they can like respect their fans enough to know that, but that definitely depends. The other thing I would say that all fans suffer in that regard is if you take away takeaway tailgating, this is probably on purpose. Suddenly, fans need to pay for food, right?
More importantly, they need to pay for alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. How much is like a 24 pack of bottled waters at like Safeway or Costco?
Costco, you can get like 24 water bottles for like $4.
I paid $18 for 3 bottled waters at the
Yep.
Coliseum. Yeah.
No, exactly.
So,
Dude, did I tell you what happened? This will be like a little story. I went to the Giants game, and this was kind of like during the pandemic, and their water fountains were shut off. And I was pretty thirsty, so I'm like, you know what? Let me go somewhere. Let me find a water fountain. The water fountains were turned off because germs, right? Hella stupid, right? People don't need water if whatever. So I go and I ask this lady for a water cup at like, I guess it was like a concession where she's selling drinks, and she goes like really loud. There's a line of people behind me, and she goes, "You can't afford water," right? And I just get like, I'm like, I get defensive. I'm like, no, I can afford water, right? And then I'm like, I'm not gonna make a huge thing and hold up this line of people over a water bottle. But I
yeah.
felt so embarrassed, and I bought a bottle of water for like $7.
Yeah.
And I really shouldn't have. I should have gone. I should have gone somewhere else and bought it from somebody else a little bit more nice. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
just like really loud. You can't afford water.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, sorry, going back to the Coliseum really quick. I also grabbed 1 beer for your dad, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that
He paid you
alone
back
was
though.
18. Yes, yes. But that alone was like 1850.
Yeah,
So and then what killed me was after the game and before the game, but walking out after the game, there were all these people hanging out, the people with the hot dogs with the bacon wrapped and all that. And there were also dudes with like coolers with like beers, waters, whatever. They were saying, I think one lady was like, 2 beers for $5. I was like, oh, what a
yeah,
slap in the face.
yeah. Or I mean, you went to Bart to get home, but
Yeah.
I could have just said, you know what, Mike, here, take one for the road. For on
Yeah.
your way back to Bart. But
Yeah.
real quick, I do want to get to some comments. Because I want to shout out the people who are contributing to the show. The Numbers is back. He was watching our last episode. The Numbers salute. Thank you. Welcome back. Pia sends hearts, in the color of the Giants. Yeah, heart back at you. Raiders Rebel is also saying salute to us. Salute.
Salute, sir.
Welcome in. If you have any experiences, tailgating or going to the Coliseum, feel free to drop some comments while we're on this topic.
I
If
got one last one after the comments.
Okay, and then Pia also, provides a little bit more context in terms of the parking at the Giants. But from what she's experienced, the Giants don't really tailgate. Some people do, but it's not like the A's or football tailgates. The parking situation isn't built for it. I have to say, the 49ers, at least, all right, I don't like that they moved out of San Francisco. I don't like that at all. They honestly should have just demolished Candlestick and then built a new stadium right there. Like, if the wind is going to be a problem, okay, build a dome. You know, don't move out of the city. They belong in San Francisco. They moved to the middle of nowhere, but at least they found a spot with an established parking lot already. And then I think that they just added to it, because
Right.
like Great America always had that parking lot right there. I'm pretty sure. And then they just added whatever they added. But on game days, they're able to expand and have a massive parking lot. They charge way too much money for it. I'll say that. Like it's not affordable really to buy parking at the game. But really, most games it's not affordable to really, pay for parking. But yeah, it was. It's just nice that there is a nice you can park there, tailgate, and walk up to the stadium. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's right there. And then Pia also says it was part of it before. They probably use it for other stuff during off season. I think she's talking about like the place that her and I went to go park with her dad and and her family. I want to say that might have been for her brother's graduation. He graduated from SF State and they did their graduation ceremony at Oracle Park. So they had parking over there uh, in like one of those. It gave me like army vibes. You know what I mean? Like Navy kind of vibes, but I don't think there was a naval base right there. You know what I mean? Like I'm just trying to describe the uh the building along the water. Like if you walk along the Embarcadero, you'll see a bunch of like buildings that just kind of look like these warehouses, you know? And that one was just like attached to the old parking lot, but it was designed for parking. And Pia confirms it was. We would always park in there for FanFest. What were you gonna say, Mike?
I was laughing earlier, like way earlier, about my experiences tailgating. I remember my first ever tailgate, at least first ever Raider tailgate, which would have also been, I think, my first ever Raider game, but it might have been like my second or third. I don't know. But it was when I was young. Basically, all I remember, like I was with my dad and like his friends and whatever, and there were these people who were like probably my dad's friends, like kind of off to the side, and they brought Jello shots,
Oh, all
and it
right, all
was
right.
like they were like bright blue and like maybe some like bright purple, and there was like a
Mm-hmm.
tray of like probably 30 of them. They're just
Uh-huh.
like handing them out, whatever. This one lady, this was when I knew like, oh, okay, I'm at a Raider game. This one lady, like she just kept going, kept going. All of a sudden, I'm like kind of like dozing, like just looking around, little kid, like probably like, well, middle school. I don't know. What would I be, like 12?
Uh-huh.
And I just look over and I just see her bright, bright blue, just pure blue vomit. I was like, oh, oh. Yeah, that was like one of my first tailgate experiences at a Raider game. So
Yeah,
never forget
so
it.
that's probably why you didn't go back until maybe honestly until this past Sunday, to tailgate. You might have been traumatized.
Yeah, I just didn't want to throw up like her.
Yeah. And luckily nobody threw up. Uh it was a great time
Yeah.
and there I think there was this I'll tell this quick little story. The last time I went tailgating, well actually it might have been the second to last time, I forget. But yeah, it was the second to last time that I went tailgating at the Coliseum. It was my brother, his friends, and my cousin Alex, and it was the first time that I saw Alex since like since it began, and it was just so funny. Like we had several drinks in the parking lot, and we didn't get in until like I don't know, it was like the fourth inning. The A's were like already down by 10. And
Mm.
like, I feel like it just got worse after that. And the only thing I remember is like Alex and we were just sitting there, just kind of laughing because like the other team just kept hitting home runs. Like it just kept getting worse.
Yeah.
It might have been against the Rangers. It might have been against the Angels. I don't know, but it was just like hilarious. Those little stories are those that like, you know, money can't buy, like
Yeah.
those experiences. And which is why it's so sad to, you know, Coliseum will still be operating for a couple more weeks. There's still going to be a little bit more baseball if you want to catch the Coliseum before it goes. But I think Mike and I might be done with it. I think that was probably our last A's game. Not my last Giants game and not my last A's versus Giants game, but the last time the Giants are going to Oakland and the last time ever that they will play the Oakland Athletics.
Yep. Yeah, Yeah, honestly, for all I know, it might be the last A's game I go to, but my mom lives up in basically the Sacramento area, so I wouldn't be shocked if I end up going to like one game just to check out that minor league ballpark, but we'll
Mhm.
see, you know. Um
Yeah. Watch the
but as
Yankees in a minor league ballpark.
that yeah, that to me was when they announced that I was just like, I don't know how you can make that work, but whatever. What I will say about the Coliseum, one, it sounds like the Oakland Roots, the new soccer team, is going to be playing in the state or the Coliseum starting next season, whenever that is. So at least the Coliseum isn't quite going down yet. You know, they're still going to make use
Okay.
of it apparently.
Yep.
Um, and then just one last thing, as far as the game we actually attended, um, it was a close game like all the way through. Very low scoring until extra innings. Tied
Yeah.
1-1, end of the ninth, get into the 10th. Like I was saying, I think the first pitch, I'm under the shade. I didn't think anything. I was like, this might go an extra 5 innings, dude. Like, I'm chilling. First pitch, 2-run homer. I was like, oh. And of course, I'm like repping my A's hat and stuff. So I'm like, I'm kind of rooting for the A's, but I don't like, I'm not that into it like that. But I was just like, one last time, let's go Oakland.
Yeah.
And I got some of those, cheers out, which was fun. And honestly, the crowd was great. Like in the video, I think because it was a lot of like you filming it, there was a lot of like blaring "Let's go Giants," but it was very back and forth. Let's go Oakland, let's go Giants. It was good. It was good, and it seemed
No,
like super friendly. Which I expected. But
which is honestly how it should be, and honestly, it was a good crowd. That's honestly what I like. That's what I wanted. It's like, let's go Oakland, let's go Giants. Just back and forth. Because if one team is like just kind of getting curb stomped, it's not as good
no,
as like when it's a close game. Like
yep,
the A's almost came back and won in the final inning. It was like, oh my god, and then
that's what
like
was crazy. Yeah,
yeah,
no,
we
okay.
yeah.
Sorry, yeah. So 2-run homer, next batter, homer, 4-1. All right, A's or the A's get the 3 outs. A's are up. It's like people are leaving. I'm still in the shade. People are leaving. They're walking out. I'm like, all right, yeah, probably right. Again, there's a runner at second. First guy hits a single, brings him in. I think so. It's 2-4, and you got a runner at first. Next guy either gets walked or he hits a single. Now you got a runner at first and second, no outs. I mean, Ty runner is at first, right? Next batter, I think he might have got walked, or at the very least, he got on base.
Mhm.
Bases are loaded, no outs, 2-run deficit for the A's at home. What are you going to do? Strikeout, strikeout, strikeout. Game over. Oh, I was like, oh, man. But you know what, though? This will be my last thing on this game. I don't know how the whole trophy thing works. I don't know if the Giants got the trophy or what, because there's a Bay Bridge trophy, right?
Yeah, there is.
Uh, it makes sense to me that the Giants won it and keep it in the Bay. So if that's what happened, I think the Giants winning was for the better. Because
Mhm,
the A's shouldn't just take it to Sacramento and then take it to Vegas. If it's the last battle of the Bay, the Giants should have it.
mhm.
So that's my thought.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a Giants fan. Um, but like another thing too, we keep referencing this video. Just stay tuned because that video will drop later this week. Should drop tomorrow, depending on how things go. But another thing I want to say: if you hear me singing in that video, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. Just cover your ears if you need to. Yeah, seventh inning stretch. I needed. I was reluctant to stretch my vocal cords, and I paid the price for it. I gave a little Mariah Carey in the more recent years. Couldn't hit the high notes, but I think the Battle of the Bay, I think, ended on a high note. It was super fun. It was worth every penny, and I wish that we could keep it going. But our channel is really predicated on this whole Battle of the Bay notion, which is why we just spent half an hour talking about this, and we decided to go to the final game ever. It means a lot to us, you know. All our friends, they're either A's fans or they're Giants fans, you know. And then, there is like a section of people who worship the devil and wear blue and live in LA, but we don't talk about them. We talk about the people who are loyal to the Bay Area, and you pick one of the two teams, and that's how you know. You know, are you from the Bay? Yes. Are you an A's or Giants fan? You know, or in football, and we're gonna start talking football really soon. So thank you guys for bearing with us. Are you a Niner fan or are you a Raider fan? You know, I think there are only two acceptable answers in the Bay Area. And we have a couple people in our fantasy league that are neither, but it's okay. We let them slide because they pay their buy-in. No, I'm just playing. No, they're our friends. And yeah, we just make them pay in fantasy. Fantasy draft next weekend.
Yes, indeed.
Yep. Mike, are you ready to talk about football? All right. Mike, let's talk about, I'd say, the most pressing news that, we have gotten in a while. It's one of the main reasons why we decided we need to do a show now, right? Antonio Pierce has named Gardner Minshew the Raiders starting quarterback. What are your initial thoughts? Instant reaction.
Yeah, I got this news right after we actually filmed our little video for this pod at the Battle of the Bay, at the Coliseum. Just for context, I guess.
Oh, you got it. You found out after that? I found
Yeah,
out
I did.
as you guys were getting off of Bart because Tyler
Yeah,
sent that thing to the group chat.
I called you, but I wasn't looking at my phone. I was just
Mm.
walking, kind of. Yeah. So, okay. Gardner Minshew named the starter for the Raiders. I honestly, dude. Okay, the next topic is like kind of going over the past two preseason games and like what's been going on, how we feel, and all that. Just to give you a fucking hint, I got bad vibes right now. Okay. But I'll get there. Yeah. So Gardner Minshew, first game against the Vikings, he did not start. Aiden O'Connell got the first drive. Gardner Minshew got like 5 after that, which I think one of them was like 3 plays, and then an attempted field goal or something like that. But he clearly got more time, even though it was against the backups in the first game. Second game, Minshew got the start, and he got like 3, if not 4 drives. Like he went into the second quarter for sure. And then Aiden O'Connell got as many drives as it took to get him to the fourth quarter. And I'm convinced. I'll start on that, and I'll get to Gardner Minshew. I'm convinced that I think the plan with this whole position battle in the preseason was like, from Antonio Pierce and maybe Tom Telesco's perspective, like all we need is Aiden O'Connell to prove it, and he'll be the guy. But if he doesn't prove it, this is hindsight 2020 right here. If he doesn't prove it, Gardner Minshew has house money because he's experienced, right? That was the word that came out of Antonio Pierce's mouth after announcing, Gardner Minshew as a starter. Was somebody asked him like, well, what was one of the deciding factors? And experience, and I can respect that, I guess. I just think if you don't let Aiden O'Connell into that fourth quarter against the Cowboys, in which the very first play of the fourth quarter, he threw a pick 6 against third stringers, if you don't have that play, and on that very play, Carter Bradley came in instead, I would have chose Aiden O'Connell. In fact, even with the pick 6, I was choosing Aiden O'Connell. Granted, I'm not the head coach, I'm not the GM, and I think with time, I'm understanding the decision a little more. I did rewatch some of the Cowboys reps for Gardner Minshew. Actually, I think all of them. And not only does he have experience, but he does have the mobility that Aiden O'Connell doesn't have. And I also did notice that he is much better in the pocket than Aiden O'Connell. I will give him that for sure. I just, usually when I watch football games, I use my eyeballs to watch the game. And my eyeballs, what they witnessed was a lot of inaccurate throws. There was one throw in which I thought Harrison Bryant died because of a hospital ball thrown by Gardner Minshew in the Vikings game.
Mhm.
Horrendous. Maybe he didn't see the defender. Maybe it's because of bad route scheming by the offensive coordinator. I don't think so, because I think it was kind of a broken play where Gardner Minshew was kind of running out of the pocket away from, pressure, and Harrison Bryant was doing the smart thing of like, oh, I'm going to run with him, get open, and catch the ball. The moment the ball touched his hands, a defender was clocking him in the shoulder, and he, within half a second, is doing a backward somersault into the ground. You know, Aiden O'Connell didn't do that. What did Aiden O'Connell do? He stood in the pocket, he delivered accurate passes decisively, and you take away one interception, he had a better preseason than Gardner Minshew. The only difference in favor of Gardner Minshew for me is, yes, experience. And Gardner Minshew, he did mention this in an interview. I don't know who or when, but at some point, somebody asked him, like, something along the lines of like, how do you feel about this offense? This is like before the preseason, right? How do you feel about this offense and like, getting into this offense with the offensive coordinator whose name I keep forgetting?
Luke Getsy.
Luke Getsy, yes, thank you. And he was like, "Oh yeah, like Gardner Minshew's funny dude. Like the way he says things is just like it's like he just I said this before, but it's like he just walked out of the Scooby Doo van or something with Shaggy with like a pre-roll in his fucking ear or something." But he was like, "Oh yeah, it's I what's nice is like he has experience and he's seen this offense in different forms before, specifically in different verbiage. So it's like for him, it's not learning an entirely new language of a new playbook. It's more of like, oh, I've seen this language. It's just you have it a little different here. Like the way that we say it is a little different. So instead of snail, it's wolf, but
Mhm.
it's the same, it's English. You know what I mean? So for him, this is where I think the decision really came in, besides the experience, mobility, of whatever, pocket awareness. I think also this is the thing that you can't see, which is the quarterbacks in the quarterback room with the coaches. How well do they understand the playbook? How well can they execute the playbook? How well do they convince the coaches that they can execute the playbook? Right? Aiden O'Connell is a young player. He's just going into his second season, right? Nobody expected him to be a starter at this point in his career. So, and honestly, following the money, Gardner Minshew getting paid what he did to come here, which was bordering on bridge quarterback money, but really like high end backup money, in my opinion. Uh, I think the writing was kind of on the wall from like an outside looking in sort of thing. But for me, again, what my eyeballs saw was Aiden O'Connell is a better passer of the football. But Gardner Minshew, perhaps he has better experience. He's definitely faster. He can get out of the pocket better. I mean, for example, Aiden O'Connell's first drive, he marched all the way down the field from like the 4-yard line, all the way down the field on the Vikings starters, just dime, 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 all the way down. And then on third down, the backup left tackle gave up a sack, in part because, hey, Aiden O'Connell, he's not fast. It's his blind side. He couldn't even see the guy, but even if he tried to run away, he couldn't, right? On third down. maybe Minshew gets out of it, but I think if that was a touchdown for O'Connell, that's the one guy who scores on a starting defense in the preseason, because Minshew started the Cowboys game. The first drive, I think they ended up going for it on fourth down. They failed because he threw like an errant pass, again, inaccurate. Eventually they got like a field goal or whatever, but he didn't score a touchdown. I want to say, I could be wrong, but he didn't score a touchdown against the Cowboys. He did against the Vikings. He had some good passes in the Vikings game, specifically in both games actually to Trey Tucker, which we'll get to him. But just to wrap it up, like, I'm indifferent, I guess, because at this point, again, hindsight 2020, I'm just like, no matter what, both of them would have saw the field either way, you know? And I guess in a way, like, I'm not trying to be like a homer for Aiden O'Connell. I'm just genuinely going off of what I saw, which was I think he's a better quarterback, or at least I think he will be, you know? No offense to Minshew. It's just, for some reason, this entire training camp, all the reports out of camp was like, man, these guys cannot have a good day, can they? Like, they just inaccurate passes galore. Like, nobody is taking that step. The thing that Antonio Pierce kept asking for was like, I just need somebody to come out here and just say, I'm your guy. Nobody ever did that. And it's clear as day that they didn't do that, between, you know, the reporting from guys like Vic Tafur and everybody else who were at training camp, just saying, yep, another inaccurate pass from Gardner Minshew. Oh, yep, another interception for Trevon Merrick. You know,
The
like it
preseason
made
looks
me,
like how those reports have been saying all along, like all off season, or at least through training camp, right?
for Gardner Minshew, yes. For Aiden O'Connell, again, you take away that pick six at the end, which I think he forced the pass, and maybe he didn't see the guy, but I'm not going to make excuses for him. In fact, actually, on the first drive, I want to say for Minshew against the Cowboys, and granted it's against starters, Aiden O'Connell's is way worse, but Gardner Minshew should have had a pick six to start the game. If you watch the game back, first drive, if not second drive, there should have been a pick six on Minshew. But from what I saw, Minshew was throwing inaccurate passes. He runs out of the pocket and he freaks out. He just throws it. O'Connell, he stands in the pocket. He'll take his 2 steps or whatever to evade pressure as best he can, and he will throw a decisive, accurate throw. I didn't see that nearly as much from Gardner Minshew.
Mm-hmm.
That all the reporting from camp and everything, Aiden O'Connell, when I watched the games, I was like, that's not what I was hearing. That's accuracy. But they go with Minshew. And I'm clearly, I'm like not happy about it. Again, I think in a sort of optimistic, but actually probably not optimistic, because I think no matter what, O'Connell's going to see the field. And obviously, I'm not going to wish an injury on Gardner Minshew. That's stupid, right? I'm not doing that. I'm just saying he's going to fail, and then the fans are going to be booing, cheering O'Connell or something, and it's like, all right, you know, week 6, O'Connell, you're up, man. And if he doesn't do good, then what? Are we going to be cheering for Minshew again? This is why I have bad vibes. Is like, nobody stepped up, so now it's just like, well, it's still a competition going into week 1, really. Even though we have the starter, it's still a competition, you know? And the competition now is, all right, don't fail. If you fail, the other guy's coming in. Maybe not week 1, 2, 3, or 4, but come week 5, watch. So
Let me know when I can chime in.
you can go ahead.
All right. So back when the Raiders signed Minshew, and like, sort of leading up to it, I remember saying on this podcast, I think Minshew is the better player, right? And then we had, sort of like back and forth in the comments. I think maybe Anthony kind of felt like maybe Aiden O'Connell was better, and you also felt like O'Connell was better. And I just really quickly want to recap like the 2 preseason games for the quarterbacks alone. So Devontae Adams didn't play in either game. But it was like, I'd say a good portion of the starters right? For the first 2 games.
Especially the first game. Brock Bowers didn't play in the Cowboys game, but the first drive or two of the first game, the Vikings game, like I would say pretty much all the starters were in besides Devontae. Uh, the offensive line played pretty deep into both games. Yeah. And the running
Yeah,
backs, sorry, and the running backs, but continue.
so I sort of felt after watching the Vikings game, my honest assessment, we spoke about this on the phone. I think O'Connell's numbers were better than Minshew's, but I think the eyeball test, watching them both play, I don't think it was like I don't think it was close in that I think Minshew looked more comfortable, and more assertive running the offense than O'Connell did. For whatever reason, when I watch Aiden O'Connell play, I just I get the fact like I can just see him bracing for impact or speeding up his delivery like he knows he's going to get hit. You know? I don't know
Yeah.
what it is. That's just the way it looks to me. And maybe I really have to break it down in slow-mo, but I mean, that's not the only reason why. I just think that Gardner Minshew, like you said, understands playbooks a little bit more. He's a little bit more experienced in that. He's a little bit more mobile, so he can probably make stuff happen when the play isn't going as designed. And I think that's probably why they chose to go with Minshew over O'Connell. And I want to give Antonio Pierce credit uh, for making a decision. But real quick, I just want to say, watching the Cowboys versus Raiders preseason game, I don't think, all right, Minshew played horribly. I think Minshew played horribly. And I don't think O'Connell really played that well either. Like, if you're gonna argue who played better, I think in that game, O'Connell played better than Minshew because Minshew was just terrible. It was just bad football. And unfortunately, the Raiders are in this situation. But I want to give credit to Antonio Pierce for making a decision, when he did. But I do also want to, I guess, be critical on him because I think, all right, if you have the decision made that you're going to name Gardner Minshew your starter, if it was pretty clear to you, I don't know why you yank Aiden O'Connell out of the game after he just threw a pick six. Like, to me, all right, during the game, it's like, all right, O'Connell is still in this quarterback battle, right? He is still fighting for that number one spot. Like maybe they'll carry it into the week 3 of the preseason. Instead, they yanked him from the game. They benched him, right? That was bad.
Yeah.
Like it's the preseason. I get it. The other quarterback was going to come in, but if you're going to name Minshew the starter, I feel like how could it not hurt O'Connell's confidence a little bit that like the last throw that he made was a bad rep, and then afterwards he was named, or the other guy was named the
Not named
starter.
start. Yeah. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I heard somebody, if not actually O'Connell, kind of talking about that post game of like, yeah, I'm going to be thinking about that one, and obviously he didn't
Yeah.
know at the time that he was not going to be the starter anymore. But
Yeah, I didn't
to
even know
your
O'Connell said that, but like how could he not? Like you're going to kill your quarterback's confidence. Like you want to
yeah,
at least have him building up something to like what you said earlier. He's going to probably see the field later on. Maybe this gives him a chip on his shoulder, but like I feel like quarterbacks you probably want to build up their confidence rather than giving them other stuff that they need to worry about. Like, all right, Minshew is getting benched. Every single throw I make, I'm being judged. You know, I might get benched again for Gardner Minshew later down the line if he gets benched, and then it's just like back and forth because I've seen that before. Teams can't make up their mind. Like look at the Jets. They went from like Mike White, Zach Wilson, Mike White, Zach Wilson. You know what I mean? Like for a little while. And it's like, I just think let O'Connell get one more drive to at least redeem himself, and then you can proceed with naming Minshew the starter. And like, look, if O'Connell gets hurt on that next drive, the decision makes itself. You know what I mean? You are already going to make that decision. Obviously it would be horrible if O'Connell got hurt, but like, don't let him just be thinking about, man, that the pick six, I got yanked for the game, and now I'm not the starter.
Yeah, I wouldn't take him getting hurt lightly. For one thing, what I was going to say before you mentioned that, one gripe that I have with Antonio Pierce or whoever is in charge of deciding who and when the quarterbacks played in the preseason, I alluded to it earlier when I mentioned like O'Connell going into the fourth quarter of the Cowboys game and throwing a pick six against third, if not fourth stringers. Why was he still in there? And I'll tell you why. I honestly I know why he was still in that play in the beginning of the fourth quarter, 15 minutes left, pick six. They had him play through the third quarter, and the third quarter ended around the 40-yard line. He was marching down the field. I think that was going to be his final drive. So they decided, all right, maybe they asked him. I don't know how it goes. I don't know how they went about it on the sideline, like in between quarters, but maybe they asked him, you want to keep going like the rest of the drive? Hell yeah, I do. Pick six. But that's the only thing that can make it make sense for me of why Aiden O'Connell, the guy battling for the starting job, is still in the game in the fourth quarter. Because other than that reason of like, yeah, go out there and just finish your drive and then, you're good. Other than that, I have zero reason why he should be in that game. Yeah, because if he gets injured, I'm pissed because then it's like, well, did he actually not win the competition or did Gardner win by, what do you call
By
that?
injury, like
By
process of
injury.
elimination.
Process, yes. Like, then it's just like, well, then the fans really still think it's a competition, And if Gardner Minshew makes one mistake, it's like, nah, get I almost say Garoppolo, get O'Connell in here, All right, Cowboys
To
game. Here are the
me,
stats. Huh?
I think he made the right decision because if you start O'Connell, in my opinion, you might just see a little bit more of last year. Minshew is going to provide a little bit of a different element. Like maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was, all right, we know what O'Connell can bring us in the games, because we've seen that last year. The roster didn't change drastically in terms of like the offense, right? It's still Devontae Adams, it's still Jacoby Myers. They added Brock Bowers and they adjusted the offensive line a little bit. Still going to be Zamir White over Josh Jacobs, right?
Well, I mean that would
Because
be a
Jacobs is gone.
change. Yes.
No, but Jacobs didn't play with O'Connell down the stretch. You know what I mean? They had already been seeing
No,
Zamir
he
White.
did. No, he did.
He got
Like
hurt.
at the end of the season, correct. But he only missed like the last 4 weeks. Garoppolo was gone week 4 or week 8. Week 8, I want to say week 8 or 9. So
Yeah,
there
but my
was at
point is
least
they've seen it with Zamir White for a couple games already.
right. But I get your point of like with the unit, but the offense has completely changed, which actually that would be my other reason why I understand. And with time, I have kind of relaxed, even though I might not seem like it. I have relaxed on the decision of like, again, to one degree or another, Minshew has kind of played an offense like this before, whereas O'Connell is probably still very much learning. And for that reason alone, I understand why. All right, let's get the guy who probably knows how to do this a little bit better right now. But when the fucking boos start coming, I think O'Connell's going to be ready, and O'Connell's going to go out there and he's going to play better than Gardner Minshew. That's what I think. But it's smart. I'll give credit. It's smart of Gardner Minshew isn't going to do any more developing on the bench, whereas Aiden O'Connell is. I can at least get behind that.
I feel like
And
a
sorry,
lot of
and
the
also
development kind of comes in the games. So if you were going to be developing O'Connell, I don't know how much he would be able to develop besides like the mental aspect of the game, but still I think I'm a firm believer that you need experience. And so
I don't mean to sound harsh. To me, watching the games, Aiden O'Connell looked like he was more prepared. He looked like he was less freaked out because Gardner Minshew was the guy who was like, "Oh, pressure," running out and then throwing an errant pass. Whereas O'Connell was just like step, step, throw, scan field, throw, accurate, accurate. Pick six at the very end sucks. But to me, man, that's why I'm having a hard time with this because my eyes tell me no, O'Connell did better, and he looks more like a pro. He looks less like a backup than Gardner Minshew.
well, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right in that regard, but is the jump from O'Connell and Minshew that drastic enough to where you could like significantly say, all right, with O'Connell being, better, better prepared and everything, does he give us a better chance to win a football game? I still think Gardner Minshew, with the added element of him being able to escape pressure in the pocket and extend plays, you add Brock Bowers to that, and like, you add Devontae Adams and Michael Mayer and Jacoby Myers. Like, I don't I think that the added element of running, when you put a mobile quarterback in there, it opens up the running lanes a little bit more. So Zamir White is going to be able to, run a little bit more efficiently. I think Antonio Pierce understands Minshew gives us the better the better chance to win football games right now. And Antonio Pierce has to make this decision because I mean, he's coaching for his job. Did they ever announce how long his extension is?
They never
Like
did, but the rumor is 2 years.
if he falls flat on his face this year, they're not going to wait for him the next year. They're going to replace him with whoever's, they might replace him with whoever's the best. So it's in Antonio Pierce's like best interest, I think in his best interest to win as many games as possible and be as competitive as possible. And I think he honestly believes that Minshew gives him the better chance to, whether or not he looks a little bit more or a little less decisive in the pocket. It's the added element I think that's the decision that he made. And maybe it's also locker room dynamics. Maybe not everybody's bought in on Aiden O'Connell because I mean, last year O'Connell wasn't great, but I think there just had to be, like you mentioned, O'Connell had an opportunity and he didn't separate himself, and they're paying Minshew this money, and there's just, I think as of right now, I think Minshew gives the better chance to win, and I think that's what they think too.
Hmm. I think right now is probably the key for me. But I want to answer the question that you posed earlier of do I think there's a big difference between Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell as far as like what was it to you like their ability to win games?
No, their preparedness is that difference. Is it a big enough gap in their preparedness, you know, versus their ability to win a game, right? Or
Right.
whoever gives you the best chance to win a game. Like maybe O'Connell is a little bit more prepared, but like, all right, I'll give you this question. And this is just an example. If I'm Andy Reid and I know Patrick Mahomes has not studied the playbook all off season, and his backup is more prepared and has studied, who am I playing week one? Who do you think
Well,
gives
this
you a better
is
chance to win the game?
this is a very dramatic version of this because obviously Gardner Minshew is not Mahomes, but Mahomes.
No, Minshew is better. I'm just playing. I'm gonna get Chiefs fans in the comments reminding me of what happened in February. In fact, all our viewers just left. I'm just kidding.
Well, I can't say for a fact which quarterback is more prepared right now. Like the feeling that I get is because of the whole experience explanation, it is implied that Gardner Minshew is better prepared right now. But again, what I saw on the field did not suggest that to me. I would say when you posed the question earlier, what came to my head was what I can see is maybe there isn't that drastic of a difference in the win-loss column between the two quarterbacks. Although I think from what I saw from the preseason, Aiden O'Connell played better, right? At their peaks, maybe right now, Gardner Minshew at his peak is better. I'll give him that, you know? But then again, like, I don't know what Aiden O'Connell's peak is because he's only, going into his second year in his career. For all we know, he's a great pocket passer, like a great field general, whatever you want to call it. When I say great, I mean like just he can win games, right? The surrounding talent on the offense is there. It's just put the right quarterback in there to go and implement a game plan,
Question:
Yes.
Is Aiden O'Connell currently a great pocket passer?
He looked better than Gardner Minshew.
Okay, but is he currently a great pocket passer?
No, because he's young.
Okay.
And he didn't play like CJ Stroud.
Out of the two quarterbacks, which quarterback led their team to the playoffs last year?
Well, did the Colts make the playoffs?
The Colts made the playoffs. They beat the Jaguars in the final week, and I want to say they. Hold on, let me check. AFC playoff picture.
I know they were both in the race, and they had their game against each other late in the season. I just need to remind everybody that Gardner Minshew had Shane Steichen calling his plays, and they had an entire offseason leading up to that season to implement that offense. Whereas last season, rookie Aiden O'Connell had Josh McDaniels, and then boom, you're fired, offense shattered. Let's bring in this makeshift offense with a rookie offensive coordinator to pair with the rookie quarterback. Let's just see what happens. And
you know what? I think I'm wrong. I think they were one game off from making the playoffs.
I want to say maybe they eliminated the Jags, though.
No, it says here the Jaguars made it. I thought – no, hold on.
I mean, maybe what you're thinking is
I need
Gardner
some
Minshew made
GPT in here.
Yeah, maybe what you're thinking is Gardner Minshew made the Pro Bowl, which is obviously good. Obviously he was an alternate, but I'm not going to sell him short. Like he played good last year. Like he seems like a gamer where it's just like, yeah, in practice and like, this sort of like it doesn't matter stuff. Like he's not that good, but then when it does matter, like he gets the job done. And I really hope that's what happens.
They lost to the Texans and they got eliminated.
Okay, so that was probably the final week.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right, because they were that close, and the Texans. That's how the Texans won the division. They were literally, I think, tied at that point. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. But he did make a Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
And he came in. He was the backup quarterback.
Yeah.
And
my thing with this is like, I guess the hard part of this, and I really do want to move off of this. I don't want to take too much longer, but like. With like say Antonio Pierce making this decision and Tom Telesco, the offensive coordinator, whoever, I understand that experience goes into this. It's just for me, the Raider fan, it was mocked up as whoever wins the job this preseason, this training camp, go out there and win the job. And I'll admit, like Aiden O'Connell didn't, boom, mic drop, big touchdown to start the game, right? That third down against the Vikings, like that could have been the difference for all I know. And to me, that's on the backup left tackle, but also a little bit because he's not that fast. But again, it was his blind side. He didn't even know the guy was there, right? Um, like in the past, yes, Gardner Minshew has been better, and I guess you can bank on that as far as optimism goes. As far as this season, let's hope that it's like the past for Gardner Minshew. That's the way I'm looking at it because I cannot for the life of me say I hope it's like the preseason because here are his stats. Okay, let's go Aiden O'Connell. No, let's do it Gardner Minshew first. Cowboys game, 10 for 21, so less than 50% completion percentage, 95 yards. That was on like 4 or 5 drives. The yards don't matter. Average 4.5 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Although, like I said, he had a near pick six. A 60.6 rating in that game for Gardner Minshew against the Cowboys backups, mind you. He started that game. Incorrect. Aiden O'Connell, although he went again 4 drives, so kind of half and half. Aiden O'Connell, 14 for 20, 96 yards, 4.8 average, 0.3 better. A touchdown and interception. We all know the interception. Neither of them
Can I
were
say something
sacked.
about that? Can I say something about that interception?
Yeah.
I don't. All right. If that decision was solely made off of that, I'm sorry, but that's stupid.
Right.
Like, I don't know.
I
Was
don't
it?
like that
I mean,
he. I
is
don't like.
any pick six good? No. Was that the
Right.
worst pick six I've ever seen? No.
No.
Like, all right,
Daniel
literally,
Jones's was.
literally Daniel Jones. That
Yeah.
was horrible, and he's getting paid like $40+ million per year.
The only pick six I've ever seen that was worse than that Daniel Jones pick six was the
Jimmy
Jimmy
Garoppolo,
Garoppolo pick 8
the
or
pick
whatever the hell
eight.
that, or pick
Yeah,
5 or whatever, which didn't technically count because it was a safety because he stepped out, but
yeah. No, it was a pick eight.
crazy. But yeah,
That might
no,
be
I
the
agree,
worst
and
play I've seen from a quarterback.
possibly, man, yeah, because he actually he passed up that Lions quarterback that stepped out, but
Dan Orlovsky.
yeah, uh, again, I don't understand why Aiden O'Connell was in there in the fourth quarter, but also like for me, like when I saw that, my reaction was like, well, I don't like the idea of my starting quarterback throwing a pick six against third or fourth stringers, for sure. But I was still sitting there thinking, but everything else that I've seen tells me this guy should be starting. Uh, so again, Aiden O'Connell's stats: 14 for 20, 96 yards, 4.8 average, touchdown, interception, not sacked. His rating was 76.2 compared to Gardner Minshew's 60.6. So again, 14 for 20 versus 10 for 21. Okay. Now let's go to the Vikings game. Box score.
Question.
Gard.
Oh no,
Yes.
no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Gardner Minshew 6 for 12, so 50% completion percentage, 117 yards, 9.8 average, nice. 1 touchdown, nice. It was the only one in the game for us, I guess. Not sacked. Rating of 112.2. Best rating of the preseason for these quarterbacks. Aiden O'Connell, 7 for 9 on one drive. On one drive against the Viking starters. 7 for 9, 76 yards, 8.4 average, no touchdown, no interception, sacked once for 10 yards, a rating of 101.9. If you take away the touchdown for Gardner Minshew, his rating has to be back down to like 70 at best, right? Whereas if you give Aiden O'Connell that touchdown in that one drive, like he might have a perfect passer rating. I don't know what constitutes a perfect passer rating, but like 7 for 9 versus 6 for 12. That's what's like whatever the term is pointing out to me is in both games, Gardner Minshew was 50% completion percentage or less. You know who's going to be pissed about this? This is what I was all getting to. When you ask the question of like, well, what, like what's the difference with like, winning or the preparedness or whatever? The difference for me is whether or not Aiden or Devontae Adams is going to be pissed off. Because as Devontae Adams is getting hospital balls and errant passes, you're going to see him on receivers season 2 going, get me the fuck out of here again with Gardner Minshew.
Well, it's what Devontae Adams chose. Honestly, he, I, I
The
mean, he
quarterback
shouldn't have
or what? What did he choose? Be specific.
to leave Green Bay.
He
I
chose to
know he
leave Green
wanted to play
Bay
with Carr,
for
but
Derek Carr. Yeah,
but
that's
Carr
what
isn't
sucks
that
for
great
me.
either. Carr isn't that great either. I get
We could
that's his homeboy. That's his friend. Very good friend. But like, I don't know, man. It
we could go on a whole tangent about Derek Carr because we kind of were a little bit in DMs on Twitter the other night, and a little bit about Trey Lance too, kind of relating the two and whatnot. But I will go on a limb and say if Derek Carr were the starter right now, and this is funny in a way because I was one of the people like pining for like, yeah, let him go. That was right before our pod started. But I was a huge fan of Carr. But my feeling was we have to just cut bait at some point to propel us to the next great Raiders quarterback. Not just Raiders quarterback, the next great quarterback, period. That's what we need,
I'm telling
in
you
my
right
opinion.
now, it's a good thing that you guys don't have Derek Carr, or you wouldn't be able to afford a guy like Christian Wilkins.
Correct. Absolutely correct. But if you somehow did manage to fit both of them together, if you had kept Derek Carr on the previous contract, he'd be going on to his final season right now. Okay? So who knows how last year goes? I mean, maybe Derek Carr plays better and, McDaniels doesn't get fired. I don't know. But you know, if. But let's just say Antonio Pierce right now, Raiders defense right now, all these pass catchers right now, Devontae, Bowers, Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker, etc. And Derek Carr is throwing the passes. I said dating back to 2016, if you swapped Derek Carr with Jimmy Garoppolo back on those like 2019 Niners, I think the Niners would have hoisted the Lombardi Trophy against the Chiefs in the first matchup. He would have connected on the pass to Emmanuel Sanders.
I I don't know if he would have even had to connect with Emmanuel Sanders. I think the Niners probably could have pulled away. I'm not going to argue whether or not Derek Carr is better than Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm with you on that. Derek Carr is a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. He's a better quarterback than Gardner Minshew. He's a better quarterback than Aiden O'Connell. But it's a double-edged sword. Was Derek Carr ever going to win a Super Bowl with the Raiders? Not anytime soon.
No, yeah,
I don't think ever. I don't think ever. The way things have were going, and the way things have been going, I don't think
it
Derek
was
Carr was ever going to win a Super Bowl with the Raiders.
it was too little, too late. Unfortunately, again, I don't want to go on the whole tangent with him, but just his situation was unfortunate for him between coaching changes and a shitty rebuild with John Gruden, and then of course finishing it off with Josh McDaniels, and you throw in a fibula break. It was all unfortunate. There was a moment there where it was like this guy could possibly be an MVP, and honestly, who knows if he keeps the same coaching, maybe he does become an MVP candidate. But you keep switching the coaches, it's hard to keep things consistent. And getting back to Devontae Adams, I would say that's where Devontae Adams is probably mentally is like things keep changing. I signed up for something completely different here. I wouldn't be shocked if, 2 weeks before the trade deadline, everybody's talking about it right now. I mean, even this offseason, leading up to the season, everything. Oh, is Devontae Adams going to be traded? Delusional Jets fans, let's get him. Let's get him right now. All these people who think like the Raiders want or are open to trading him, they're not. But that's in large part because he hasn't requested to be traded. So if in 7 weeks from now, or 8 or 9, he requests a trade, I won't be shocked. In large part, just like Derek Carr and having to cut him and me agreeing with that, in large part, Devontae Adams being traded makes sense because of his contract. He has no guarantees moving forward after this season. So he's going to want something different starting next season, if not starting mid-season this year, because of a guy like Gardner Minshew. I am now prepared to move on.
Okay. Before we move on, just a quick thing. This was one of the reasons why I was in favor of seeking out Jim Harbaugh as opposed to Antonio Pierce, which it sounds like the Raiders did at least inquire about Harbaugh's availability. But I know we had many conversations about that. But my biggest question, do you remember, was whether or not Antonio Pierce could figure out the quarterback situation. That was my biggest question, and that's one of the many reasons why I was in favor of Harbaugh at the time. But
Yeah.
we don't need to have that discussion.
I actually will add on one thing I know, but you did remind me of the one other gripe that I have for Antonio Pierce right now. And this is more of like maybe coach speak or something. But before free agency, I remember Antonio Pierce having a presser or something, and he specifically said, what we don't want is a Band-Aid at the quarterback position. And they prompted to go out and sign Gardner Minshew, and then they don't draft a quarterback in the draft. That to me, especially after watching this preseason, not only is it a Band-Aid, it's looking like a soggy Band-Aid that's about to come off. So, and bear in mind, I can understand at least like that's coach speak. He does a lot of good coach speak. He does a great job with speaking. I'll tell you that. But that was one where maybe he shouldn't have said anything because that's actually not in his hands. That's a Tom Telesco job. And he said something to set up Raider Nation, the fans. All right, well, we're not going to get a Band-Aid quarterback. We got a Band-Aid quarterback. So that's my one gripe right now with Antonio Pierce. I don't mind the decision right now. I think I'm not exactly going to say it's going to work out, but I still think Aiden O'Connell is going to see the field. But as far as like the overall scheme and the overall this season and the beginning of this offseason, him saying like, we don't want a Band-Aid quarterback. We don't want a Band-Aid at the position. Well, that's what it's looking like, dude. So, if you don't go out and draft a quarterback next year, you're going to have a serious problem. Like the fans will turn quick. In my opinion, I know I will probably be one of them of like, hey, again, the whole Derek Carr thing. The whole point was let's get to the next great quarterback. If you can't do that in the next 3 years since cutting Derek Carr, what are we doing? So,
my last question: does it make you feel, or would it make you feel a little bit better? Since we do know Antonio Pierce has been very vocal about this being a player-led team, right? This is the players have just as much to do with it as he does, right? Would it make you feel a little bit better if it just was the team came together and rallied behind Minshew and decided they prefer him over Aiden O'Connell, and that's why they went with him?
I would like to hear somebody from the team say that it was a team decision, but from what I understand, Antonio Pierce came out, post-game presser against the Cowboys and said, yep, I'll sleep on it. I'll talk to Tom Telesco and offensive coordinator. I keep wanting to say Adam Gase, dude. Luke Getsy. I'll talk to Luke Getsy. I'll talk to Tom Telesco, and we'll have a decision soon. I'll sleep on it. And then the next morning, we had the decision. So, in my opinion, I don't think they talked to the team. Maybe he texted Devontae. Maybe. But I think this was a coach's and GM decision. And I think, like we said, just to start it off, it's experience-based and a few other things. So.
Mm-hmm. So let's move on to the rest of the team, because that was just one out of 53 potential players to make the roster. How do you feel like the Raiders preseason is going so far outside of the quarterbacks? Because, the quarterbacks have been the main story. What about, everyone else?
I mean, I started this whole thing off with Gardner Minshew saying, I'm getting bad vibes. Um, and that's not necessarily directed at Antonio Pierce. It's directed at some specific players and specific maybe position groups, right? Or even an entire side of the field. And I think when I say that, you're probably thinking, oh, because of the quarterback, the offense. No, actually, like my expectations for the offense was rather low because of the quarterbacks. Like I had that preset expectation. But every time I look at the offensive playmakers surrounding the quarterback, I get excited. I think, the one thing we didn't see in the preseason was Devontae Adams, and that's going to make a difference for whoever's starting, right? So then naturally, if it's not the offense, I'm going to tell you, it's not special teams. The defense is worrying me because first drive of the first preseason game against the Vikings, I believe, elected to receive, and they marched all the way down the field. Sam Darnold, I don't even know if Jordan Addison played. I think he did, but I don't know. I know Justin Jefferson didn't. Uh, Aaron Jones didn't. So they had their backup running back, and at best their number 2 receiver, right? Number 3 and number 4. And Sam Darnold diced this defense up all the way down the field. And then finally, I mean, somewhat similar to last season, it was bend, 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 but don't break. And then they forced a fourth down, and Ja'Cory Bennett got the pass deflection and, turnover on downs. And again, Aiden O'Connell led the drive all the way back the other way. Pretty much the same thing happened for them. But I was worried over the fact Sam Darnold just marched down what I came into this offseason believing should be a top 10 defense. Should I be worried? Yeah, it's one drive. You're going to enjoy this part, Josh. The following week, we play the Cowboys. Cooper Rush did not do much. I think he may have scored 3 to 6 points. And you know where I'm going with this. But Trey fucking Lance, dude. Trey Lance. I got to give him credit because I didn't expect him to do that because the previous week I think he was struggling. Here's
Honestly, the previous week he was taking a lot of what the defense was giving him, so his yards were not impressive. His completion percentage was like pretty good. It was a Derek Carr special in terms of like taking the check down, taking like what the defense gives you. Obviously, Carr would end out with like much better yardage and efficiency, right? But I felt like he played well. Not great. I thought he played well. And yeah, I mean, there were a lot of drops, but he played much better, I think, in this second game.
Yeah. And maybe there's something to this of like, Trey Lance kind of playing what I would call conservatively, maybe the defense doesn't mind like giving up the little play, the little play, the little play. They're just not going to let you beat them on the big play. And I noticed that last year with the safeties, especially Trevon Merrick and Marcus Epps. They did a great job of not letting anything get past their heads. Phenomenal.
I think another thing too, in specific to Trey Lance, we're not going to talk about him very much longer.
No,
but what's it called? Everybody, like most of his critics, were saying, well, he can hit the deep shot, but those are so rare. He can't throw. He can't make quick decisions and throw short passes. It's just not in his game. That part of his game is not developed. And credit to Mike McCarthy for letting Lance actually get a ton of reps. He threw 40-something times in the first preseason game. I don't know how many times that he threw in the Raider game, but
it felt like 40.
it felt like 40. A guy who's a developmental project needs something like that. He needs to play a lot of football and learn. And I think he progressively has gotten better with more that he's played. But I wonder if the Raiders could have just traded for him and see, because I feel like maybe I would, like, personally as a fan, I would rather have a high upside project than a soggy Band-Aid.
Yeah. Um. I, again, my issue with Trey Lance right now, like, I'm going kind of two different directions here. Like, I'm freaked out by the fact that, okay, going into the second quarter, for whatever reason, Antonio Pierce and company decided, let's keep Jack Jones, Jacorian Bennett, Robert Spillane, Divine Diablo, Trevon Merrick, and Marcus Epps in the game the entire second quarter. And they might have even been in the start of the third quarter, too. Like, they kept the entire defensive backfield on the field, the starting defensive backfield. And Trey Lance got to see that. So I was like, oh, let's go. Here we go. But they did have the backup defensive line in, and they got zero pressure on the guy. Um, and that probably helped, right? But still, it's like, well, you have pros playing corner and linebacker and safety. They should get a stop here. Like, this is practically a starting defense. Nope. First, well, I don't know if it was, I think maybe the second drive, he marched all the way down the field, and the receiver, I don't even know his name. He got Jack Jones bad. He did a little double move, and he like faked in, cut out. Trey Lance already threw the ball. It was perfectly executed, very well timed. He trusted his receiver. I was very impressed with that throw. Little, back of the end zone fade, maybe a 10-yard touchdown at most.
Mhm.
Uh,
And you know what's funny? That throw kind of worried me a little bit because I'm like, man, if Jack Jones just turns around, he has a pick in the end zone right there. Because
yeah,
in my opinion, I feel like Lance could have thrown that a little bit further, like a back
yeah,
pylon kind of thing. But
right,
to the receiver's credit, he beat he beat Jack Jones in the route.
yeah. And like early in the game, Jack Jones was destroying, absolutely destroying. But then like later, it's like Trey Lance is up, and it's like, nope, we're just giving everything to them. And again, I wonder now if it's like the defense was just playing like this soft zone or something, and like giving up the little intermediate stuff, like whatever, whatever. And then out of nowhere, 15 plays later, they're at the 20-yard line, they're in the red zone. It's like, dude, you guys are just letting them chunk the shit out of you. Like I was like I know Trey Lance is an interesting prospect. He shouldn't be doing this to 80% of the Raiders starting defense. He should not be doing this to them. So that paired with the first drive of the Vikings game freaks me out. Uh Obviously they need Kuntz and obviously Crosby and Wilkins in on every play, especially on passing plays.
I
Because
wouldn't I wouldn't be so freaked out. I wouldn't be so freaked out.
yeah,
Like, let me be your down to earth guy. Last year, the Niners played like shit in the preseason. They got dogged by the Raiders, in the preseason last year and in the joint practices, right?
yes,
Seemed like the
yes.
Raiders were dominating. We had Grant Cohn on the show. He might be coming on the show next week. Stay tuned for that special guest. You know, he told us like, he was really impressed by like Max Crosby, but it just seemed like the Raiders probably got the better end of those practices. And then, the Niners end up going to the Super Bowl anyway. It's like,
Right.
the Raiders, I think, do have talent on their team, and maybe they're just not motivated to give everything in the preseason. Whereas in the regular season, I feel like the games go so much differently. Like the preseason, I really feel like it's less about the outcome of the game, but it's like, really getting yourself right before the season starts. And so, obviously you never want to get beat for a touchdown, but I guarantee Jack Jones, that was a good experience for Jack Jones to, I don't know, uh, uh, I guess it's not a good experience to get torched on a route, right?
Yeah,
But
but it is
if
good to
he if
kind of
he's a
like get
good if
checked.
he's a good player, he won't let that happen again.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
exactly. I agree.
Like to
I
learn from
agree.
your mistakes. I
Yep.
I'm a believer in learning from your mistakes. And if you're going to make those mistakes, make them in the preseason. Don't make them in the regular season.
Yeah.
So the Niners were getting gashed by the Raiders last year, played horrible, this, that, and the other. And then I'm like, oh man, I really don't know how to feel about this team. And then I think Brock Purdy played in the final preseason game, and I was like, oh yeah, if he plays like that, there's no doubt in my mind this team, can win the Super Bowl. And they could have, but they didn't. But, you know, I just like obviously the expectation for the Raiders isn't for them to go or to win the Super Bowl. But, the starters not playing great in the preseason. Maybe they're just not motivated. They played plenty of football already. If it was young guys fighting for a spot on the roster, I would be a little bit more like, yeah, they're fighting for their career right now.
Mm.
Trey Lance is fighting for his career right now. The guys on the Raider defense, I don't think there's a single thing Max Crosby can do to lose his job. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't think
Right.
anybody's jumping Jack Jones anytime soon in the depth chart.
No.
You
Yeah.
get what
No.
I mean?
Yeah. No. They just need to. I could see it where maybe they were just playing some like very vanilla stuff, and again, it was like the Cowboys' offense, Trey Lance specifically, was just like, I'm going to take what they give me, and maybe that was something the Cowboys were focusing on with him. Was like, hey, you try too hard to do this and this, just take what they give you. Just focus on doing that in these games. We'll give you as many snaps as you want. Just take what they give you. And he took what the fuck they give him, you know? But maybe on the reverse aspect, the Raiders defense just like, hey, soft cover two, soft this, whatever, who cares? And because they were half starters and they don't want to, I don't know. It was just weird that they were still playing. I don't know. Just whatever. But okay, let me continue with my negatives for the preseason so far, and then I'll get into my positives. The reserve offensive line, like the third stringers, garbage. Like all these undrafted guys, I'm sure some of them will be on the practice squad, but I that Vikings game, the second half of the Vikings game with the quarterback that they cut, I'm forgetting his name. God awful, dude. I mean, the offensive line was horrible, but also the quarterback just was like trying to just run because he couldn't do anything. And that was something of like a topic was like Antonio Pierce with like the timeouts at the end of the Vikings game. I didn't really care. Like I think from what I understand, he was trying to get the ball back, but it was just oddly timed. Uh, but what I didn't like about like maybe that explanation, like the entirety of the fourth quarter, or not the entirety, but like the second half of the fourth quarter, Carter Bradley came in and the Raiders had the lead. And I'm not even joking. Carter Bradley probably had like 3 drives, maybe 9 to 12 total plays. Every single play was a direct snap, or not direct snap, but a run play, hand off to the running back. Carter Bradley did not attempt a single pass. And then at the end of the game, the Raiders are losing now. And then it's like, oh, timeout, timeout, timeout. It's like, well, maybe if you didn't just not give Carter Bradley a single chance to kind of show himself, you know, like it's
Mhm.
preseason. I don't really care. Maybe Antonio Pierce was just like, let's get this over with. But then it was like, oh shit, now we're losing. Like I should look like I'm trying. I don't know. But that was just something to bring up, I guess. Negatives, reserve O line, the backup defensive line, like I said, against the Cowboys, just no pressure. Once the starters came off the field, zero pressure. Both games. Zero pressure, zero push. And that includes my top guy that I am, not quarterback, not the defensive team overall. The guy that I'm freaking out about is Tyree Wilson. This dude is becoming Cleveland Farrell 2.0. I would go on a limb and say he's worse than Cleveland Farrell, like at this point in his career, because he's not special against the run, which Cleveland Farrell at least kind of was. And Tyree Wilson is not special as a pass rusher. At least in his rookie year, it seemed like he was like trying different things. Now he's just like one tool bull rush guy. His get off is still super slow. He's not getting any push. Even though he's like this big dude and he got all this muscle, he's not showing anything for it. In fact, maybe it's showing that he's slower. And just to like I shouldn't say I'm freaked out. Like I like him as a depth guy. It's just he was blending in with this backup defensive line that wasn't doing shit. The 7th overall pick of last season should not be blending in with backups. You know what I mean? He should be popping off the screen. So that's what I'm kind of just like, here we go again, But to sort of maybe flip that into a positive, what I have disliked with previous regimes, whether it be Mike Mayock or this past regime with Josh
Josh
McDaniels
McDaniels.
and Dave Ziegler, these teams that draft for need, if you get lucky, you can get your need at cost. And for you and I, this is kind of like a fantasy football draft, right? It's very different, obviously, because fantasy football is one season for us, whereas the Raiders, it's careers we're talking about. Yeah. In let's say in the first round of a fantasy football draft, if you're sitting there and it's like, I know for a fact I'm going to take a wide receiver, but the best player available is a running back, just take the running back, right? Like, if you have a plan, I get it, but like in the NFL especially, like I shouldn't really compare it to fantasy football. I'm just simplifying it. In the NFL, it's like, okay, yeah, yes, we do need a defensive end, but if you just took the best player available, they would actually have a higher chance of becoming an impact player sooner than this developmental guy who's like, oh, he's the freak athlete, he's got the frame, he could become this great defensive end. Well, it's not happening. And again, to spin it into a positive, I take a lot of good from Tom Telesco just sitting back and, just letting the best player available fall to him in Brock Bowers. And it's a tight end. People say like, oh, the tight end position, like safeties, they're not as important and vital to teams as like obviously quarterbacks, but like wide receivers or like running backs versus offensive linemen. Like offensive line is more important. Yeah, sure, tight end isn't as important as a defensive end, but if Brock Bowers is this 5-tool guy who can do anything for our offense that he's being hyped up to be, I'll take that in a heartbeat over a Tyree Wilson any day.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's
So
the thing, like when it comes to deciding on who you're going to pick, in the draft, I think you just kind of have to look at the board. I'm assuming they looked at Tyree Wilson and then they compared Tyree Wilson to, similar players in his position. And maybe Tyree Wilson isn't the most talented player out of everybody who's left on like the big board. But maybe the drop off from Tyree Wilson to the next available pass rusher is a huge drop off. And the Raiders know that they want to draft a pass rusher, right? Whereas,
right.
let's just say, the scouts have determined, all right, the quarterbacks, right? The gap between quarterback number 1 and quarterback number 15 is not as great as the gap between defensive lineman number 1 and number 2, or number 1 and number 3. So you kind of are forced to maybe take a player with less talent, but you can make up for, like, you can't make up for the drop off in talent if that player is off the board. You know what I mean? So you're taking position of need, but you're also taking into account what is available later in the draft. And then a lot of that is like you gamble. We don't know what goes on inside these war rooms exactly.
Yeah, I mean that. Like, I understand what you're saying, and I agree. Like, that is a thing, but like, I'm just at the point now as a fan where I'm just like, it's so clear and obvious. You should just take the best player available and build on it. And free agency is before the draft, so that's kind of the tough part. Like, I think if anything, free agency should be after the draft, but then teams wouldn't pick by need quite as much, so it makes it more interesting. Maybe, I don't know, but you know who the player was that was picked directly after Tyree Wilson? So
Hmm.
Tyree Wilson with 7th. Do you know who the 8th pick in the 2023 NFL draft was?
Was it Devontae Smith? No.
No, that
Who?
Devontae Smith was picked like 3 years ago.
3 years prior, you mean?
Yeah,
Or 3 years ago from now?
either one.
Yeah. Whatever.
Bijan Robinson.
Okay.
Oh, 1 year later, Josh Jacobs, free agent, Green Bay Packers. Don't you think maybe the Raiders having Bijan Robinson right now would be way more exciting than having reserve defensive end Tyree Wilson?
Well, it would be more exciting, but all right, who was the next defensive end who got selected in the draft?
Lucas Van Ness, Packers.
Is he good?
And then Will McDonald. I don't know yet. These guys are young. And then Will McDonald, and then Miles Murphy of the Bengals, Felix, I'm not pronouncing that, Chiefs defensive end. I've never heard of him. Isaiah Foskey, Saints. It's really just looking. I want to say this was a thing. It looks like the defensive end class just wasn't very strong in this class.
Mm-hmm.
So to your point, I can understand why they were like, let's just take the best one available, because he's freakishly gifted physically. Maybe we can mold him into something.
And did the Raiders draft a running back later in that draft or no?
I believe they did not.
Okay.
Because
well, they didn't. They didn't need running backs. Like, all right, you take Bijan at number 8. Josh Jacobs is your bell cow. Like, yeah, you can split the work between them, but really, how much is it going to improve the offense?
Right. Really, the question on the day of the draft was like, well, should we take the risk on Jalen Carter? Because he was the favorite to be the number 1 pick, and then he got in like a car accident and everything went all negative on him. He ends up on the Eagles, and he's honestly not lived up to the hype. Maybe the player the Raiders should have taken was Darnell Wright, offensive tackle of the Bears. I want to say he's like already kind of becoming an upper tier. I think he's a right tackle. Peter Skoronski was another guy I really liked. And the next pick, 12th overall, I mean, he was labeled as a reach, but Jahmyr Gibbs,
Again, running backs, but the Raiders didn't need running backs,
yes.
right?
And
neither did the Lions. Neither did the Lions, and so to your point, the Lions took what was probably the best player available and has made that offense dynamic. But they were leaning on David Montgomery, and if Montgomery doesn't get hurt, I'd say that offense would still be fine without Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, there was a report that the Raiders may have wanted Paris Johnson, who the Cardinals took 1 pick before them. He's offensive tackle. And I think Devon Witherspoon was the guy, I know I really wanted. I would hope the Raiders would have taken him if he fell to 7. But point is, just to all that, if I'm the Raiders, history shows me that usually the thing that works out best for the Raiders is when they pick best player available. So hopefully they keep that up. And if they can find themselves a situation where, hey, this quarterback is the best player available, yeah, do it, obviously. And then really quick, just to end this.
If the quarterback is never the best player available, at some point they got to get a quarterback.
Whatever becomes available to them, whatever the best option is, they need to swing for it. If that's Dak Prescott at this point, fuck it.
I would take Dak Prescott in a heartbeat if I'm the Raiders.
With this roster, I'm starting to lean that way. And I've been very strong that I don't want a free agent quarterback. I don't want to pay top dollar for a quarterback and not be able to pay for anything else. But at this point, I'm getting there because this roster is built to win surrounding the quarterback. But here we are, right? So really quick, just to finish this segment up, just some positive players. I'll give you 4 names. Number 1 is Trey Tucker. The dude is absolutely exploding, and he's clearly earning himself like a strong role on this offense. And I like him as like a vertical threat. And Gardner Minshew clearly likes him too. So, and I can see, again, with all these weapons on the offense, it's like you have Devontae, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers. Like, who's the defense going to focus on? If there's ever a play where the safety isn't following Trey Tucker, and he's in single coverage with a linebacker from the slot or a safety, running behind him, throw it, Next guy, DJ Turner. He's been a great special teamer for the Raiders for the past 3 seasons. He's also a backup receiver, and he seems to be starting to actually at least make the case for earning a role on the offense as a sort of utility, sort of similar to Trey Tucker sort of role. And then on defense, I got 2 names for you. Jack Jones is pretty obvious. Dating back to the beginning of training camp, he's been the second best player on the field behind Max Crosby. And then
Even dating back to last season.
yeah, between him and probably Malcolm Kuntz. And then I would say nobody has actually said this like aloud, but just from the reports and like all the like, oh, another interception for this guy. I hinted at it earlier, but if I had to guess who the third best player is on this team right now, well, on this defense right now, he might actually be secretly the second best player on this defense. It's Trevon Merrick. He's going into a contract year. That Vikings game, he was all over the field. All over the field. I think he's going to break out this year, and I think he's going to earn himself a good payday, and I hope it's with the Raiders. Yeah. That's what I got for you.
Are we ready to move on to the 49ers?
Yes, indeed.
All right. Let's talk about the 49ers holdout, situation, as a whole. There's two players in particular that I want to talk about. Nobody, every day I go on social media and nobody seems to be talking about Brandon Ayuk. Nobody ever mentions him and how he's not showing up. And there seems to be nobody is talking. No. Everybody is. It's actually kind of calmed down a little bit. There was like a new report today, and what's funny about every single new report, it's like the same thing. It's like, oh, the sides are getting closer, but there's nothing done. Like, okay, that was the report last time.
Yep.
Oh, it's trending towards this, but still nothing. The situation is very fluid. Like, oh man, I'm so tired of it. Here's what I'll say. I would rather keep Brandon Ayuk over Deebo Samuel because I think Ayuk's going to have a longer career. And I think, I don't know, he is able to beat man-to-man coverage a lot better. I think that he and Purdy have, a lot of chemistry. And I personally don't think that the Niners need Deebo Samuel. Obviously, they have to wait until next year if they're really if they really want to get rid of that contract. But you make Ayuk sign the extension, you keep him here, you can offload Deebo, and then you're able to only have one expensive wide receiver. Right now, it just kind of seems like, not a lot of receivers are, besides Jacob Cowing, not a lot of receivers are showing a ton of promise. Chris Conley is also doing well as well in the preseason, and we'll talk about the preseason a little bit. But the 49ers drafted Ricky Pearsall number 1, all right, with their number 1 pick, and he has been hurt for most of training camp. And I'm as a 49er fan, I am just so tired of getting nothing from first round picks. I'm so tired of it, dude. It's been like our last first round pick who has made a contribution to the team. Do you know who that was? Like a significant contribution to the team.
Man, it might be Nick Bosa.
No, it's a little bit more recent than Nick Bosa.
Oh, Brandon Ayuk.
Yep. That was before Ricky Pearsall. That was our last first round. Well, before Trey Lance, that was our last first round pick. And so the signs just kind of point to, you got to find a way to get this guy extended. I think Brandon Ayuk, he does give the extra effort even on running plays. He blocks. He's able to create separation, get open, just, get it done. And if I'm Ayuk, how can I watch that Pittsburgh Steelers preseason game? And how can I think, yeah, I really want to go to Pittsburgh? Like, if you choose to leave the 49ers, I really think that you're going to have the same trajectory as Devontae Adams, where you're going to see your primes. No offense, Mike, to the Raiders, but you're going in an unstable quarterback situation. Which Carr, to the Raiders' credit, the situation with Carr was a little bit more stable than I think what the Steelers have right now. The Steelers just kind of have uh, it's not 1A, 1B, but I think Russell Wilson is clearly the favorite to start. And then, Justin Fields is like ready if he ever gets the opportunity to. But I think Russell Wilson's sort of at the end of his career. And, Brandon Ayuk literally said he wants to be a champion, right? Like he said that after he was clearing out his locker and he was crying in front of the media. This was after the Super Bowl loss, and it was like, whether or not he would be back, and he said if it makes sense. And it's like, well, what do you want? And he said, I want to be a champion. If you go anywhere else, you may never win a championship. You are a 26-year-old receiver, and you're going to sign a big deal that will probably put you on the books with your next team until you're 30. I would want to be in San Francisco. I personally, like, not even just being a 49er fan. I personally would want to be with Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan over the unknown. You take the unknown, you may never win a championship in your life. And that's not to say that the Niners will ever win a championship. There's no guarantee there. It's just giving yourself the best chance at long-term success. Like I said it on Twitter, if Brandon Ayuk is purely making a financial decision, leave. Go tell the 49ers you're not interested in California taxes. You want to go somewhere, you want to get the bag. If you're going to be unhappy about that, then maybe just take a hometown discount. If the Niners are like, you know what, this is the very best offer. Like, I understand it's business, but like Ayuk's got to sacrifice a little bit, if he does want to keep playing for the team that his family grew up rooting for. His mom's a Niner fan. There's that picture of him wearing the 49er, I think it's a turtleneck, when he was little. And then also, it's come to my attention that Brandon Ayuk bought a house this offseason over here in the Bay Area. So, like, do you really want to move? Like, all right, if it's between like $2 million, guess what? You're gonna have to buy like a couple $1 million house somewhere else and move. You know what I mean?
I heard it's not only that he bought a I heard that it's not only that he bought a house. I heard he brought his entire family out to the Bay Area.
I've heard something like that, but I wasn't able to confirm it. But it's like, dude,
So,
you
yeah.
want to be here.
But if true,
it's like, all right, the Niners accepted a deal with Cleveland. Ayuk didn't want to go there. The Niners accepted a deal with the Patriots. He didn't want to go there. The Patriots were offering north of $30 million. So it doesn't seem like it's just about money for him. Like, he's like, I don't know what it is about the Steelers besides Mike Tomlin. I don't know what there is, so appealing. But Mike Tomlin has been the coach there, has had some great teams over the past couple of years, just hasn't had the quarterback. And guess what? What signs suggest that he's going to get the quarterback anytime soon? You know what I mean? Russell Wilson is he's on his last legs of his career. Then there's going to be Justin Fields. You're going to put up with that over staying here with, 18 yards per reception and the efficiency that you get and competing for Super Bowls? I don't know. Consider me crazy, but maybe if like an extra $1 million was offered to me somewhere else, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I would make the same decision, but to me, it just makes more sense. And if you're on a more successful team, it's no question Brandon Ayuk is going to continue having success on the 49ers if he chooses to stay, right? I don't think that's a question. He is going to be one of the featured stars of the team for years to come. And then guess what? 4 years from now, unless something drastically changes, Brandon Ayuk is going to be eligible for another payday. And if he's that good, he can go get paid somewhere else, right? to me, but if you're on a bad team, your value goes down. If you're a good receiver on a bad team or a good player on a bad team, your value just kind of goes down. If you're a good player on a good team, your value is significantly higher, in my opinion. That's just the way. Like I think that seems to be the way that I think trades play out. You know what I mean? Doing business with
Yeah.
like a legit contender, So um besides that, the thing that's more, I would say, alarming is the situation with Trent Williams that, like, no sarcasm, actually not, like, the media is just kind of ignoring, aside from, like, 49er, you know, a select few of 49er journalists and whatnot. Uh the Trent Williams thing is very bizarre because, like, McCaffrey wanted a new deal. They gave it to him, like, immediately. And then now Trent Williams is, like, saying that he wants a new deal. There are rumors, or there's speculation that Trent Williams is just going to come back, but he just, he knows he's going to be good by the time the season rolls around and just doesn't like doing training camp. And you know what I think about that?
Hmm.
Fuck that. Honestly, fuck that. Like, you're supposed to be a leader on this team, and you're setting an example that, like, all right, and this is all speculation. So Trent Williams, I apologize if this is not the case. I know you're never going to hear this or see this, you know, but if this is just, I don't want to show up and put in hard work, you know, I'm just going to be good anyway. I think it's a bad example to set for the young guys who, you know, or for everyone else who comes in and actually puts in work every day. Like, I'm sorry if you don't feel like you can improve at practice, or you feel like you don't need to improve. I don't think Trent Williams played his best ball in the Super Bowl. You know, uh, I don't know. I'm a firm believer of leading by example. And, if you're not there, how can you lead? How can the team get closer if you're not there? You know what I mean? One of the big things about football is being cohesive and, becoming, a close team that enjoys to be there together. The less time that you spend together, the more divided you're going to be, because the next person who's actually been working their ass off isn't going to take, too kindly. Like, I know Jalen Moore understands his situation. He's not competing to beat you, but it's just, other guys on the team have to work their ass off to make the team. And I get it. You've earned the respect of everybody, including the coaching staff. And, you know, you're arguably the best player on the team. But I'm not so convinced that you're going to have your best season if you're not out there, you know, putting in the work. And maybe you're putting in the work at home, but it's not the same. I think the guys need to be together. They need to be working together, building that bond, instead of, you know, I'm looking out for my own best interests. But if it is, and I just want to clarify, that was all speculation. If it is just business stuff, look, I understand right now, you know, like I said last time, I didn't like it. I think I said, you should fire your agent, but I get it. This is the time right now where you have the leverage. So if you have leverage, use your leverage, because you're not going to have leverage later to get better deals out of the 49ers or out of another team potentially. You know, I understand that. So if it is business, I'm willing to be a little bit more patient, but as a fan, I just, like, I want all that stuff to be settled. The season is like 2 weeks away, or 3 weeks away, right? 2.5 weeks away.
Hmm.
I think it's way too late to be settling all this business stuff. And so many teams are going through it. You know what I mean? The Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb are going
Hmm.
through it. Jamar Chase and the Bengals are going through it. I'm sure other players at other positions, like, the Niners right now have two players who are unhappy with their contracts and they're just not showing up. They're getting all this money deducted from their deals. Uh, yeah, I don't know. It's just it's not setting the greatest vibe. Do you want to know the honest opinion of the vibe this gives me?
Oh, well, I'll tell you mine. It's Super Bowl hangover.
Super Bowl hangover. Like, is all this drama and stuff supposed to make me believe, oh, you know what? The 49ers, they're going to get it done this year. They're hungrier than they've ever been. Literally, it sounded like a shit show this entire offseason. And I'm like, well, this might be Super Bowl hangover year, you know? And unfortunately, our players are old. And if it is a Super Bowl hangover year, this window might be over with this team. And they might have to rebuild with Purdy, hopefully rebuild with Ayuk, and, you know, this brand new draft class, which I'm going to talk about now. I don't have much else to say about the holdout updates. Everybody's been talking about it kind of nonstop. So, I'll kind of keep that as a short segment. But man, 49ers, just get something done with Ayuk. Worry about the money later. You could probably offload Debo's deal. You know, if it comes down to choosing between Ayuk and Debo, don't think twice. The answer is Ayuk. Um, but the 49ers preseason so far, I think, like I said in the Raiders segment, ever since last year, dude, I am just kind of, I feel like preseason tells you a lot less than what you think it tells you about your team. You know what I mean? Because I was over here thinking, you know, oh, this quarterback is doing good. You know, I thought I liked Trey Lance a little bit more than Sam Darnold just by watching the preseason last year because the ball didn't move with Sam Darnold, and at least Trey Lance was, progressing and getting better, and coming back and leading a game-winning drive. Next, couple days he's traded. After they told him, yeah, you know what, Sam Darnold actually pulled away several weeks ago. Like, okay, you know what I mean? Uh, I have no way to honestly, project the 53 man roster because I think it's more than just who played better than who. At this point, um, I think it's also like who can we stash on the practice squad and have them not get scooped up, and sort of gauging that. So maybe next week we might do like a projection of the 53 man roster. But in terms of the 49ers preseason so far, um, I think one of the main training camp battles that we talked about for the Niners is we talked about the backup quarterback battle, and I think that just by looking at the quarterbacks by these two games, I prefer Josh Dobbs as quarterback number two. I think he has proven that he can come in and win games in the NFL, and you give him a stacked roster like the 49ers. If Purdy, knock on wood, ever has to miss any time, I think my choice would be Josh Dobbs, but it's not my choice. It's Kyle Shanahan's. I thought Dobbs looked pretty good in the preseason game against the Saints. We didn't really see much out of Tanner Mordecai, but I've heard nothing but great things about him. One thing I do want to talk about is this draft class as a whole has been playing well. I think Dominic Puny, I think he's a dog. I've seen Brian Baldinger's breakdown. I've seen clips of him, protecting. I think he's going to be the starting right guard, and I think he
Yeah,
deserves to be. He was even holding his own against Cameron Jordan.
yeah.
You
I,
know,
I like Mustafa as well. Um,
Mustafa. So, Really solid addition at safety. Renardo Green looks pretty good. Jacob
Yeah.
Cowing looked really good in this past game. I think the thing about Jacob Cowing is like maybe the consistency, because I think maybe he's like battling, he was like battling a little bit of injury stuff like during camp, I heard. But every time that he's like been in there and been healthy, he's looked great. And then Ricky Pearsall, dude, where the hell is Ricky Pearsall? Where is he? During training camp, apparently he doesn't
That
participate in one-on-ones. I I haven't seen him suit up at all in the preseason. Like, is he out there? Where the hell is Ricky? I don't know, man.
Yeah, no, that's hamstrings for you.
And then hold on. 1 second. I feel like I'm overlooking someone from this past draft. Oh, Tatum Bethune also, looks really good. I think he should make the team. We haven't seen much out of Isaac Garendo, but in the preview for this next preseason game, we're going to be able to, talk about this. This is a big opportunity, I think, for Isaac Garendo to show why he should be kept over Cody Schrader or Matt Breida. I personally, I know Patrick Taylor is also in the mix, but I don't think he is as favorited as a candidate as the other two that I just mentioned. But honestly, I remember back a couple months ago, I said the 49ers need to draft well. It's imperative on their success going forward that they need to draft well in this draft. It seems like they have. They haven't gotten much, like I said, not much contribution from Ricky Pearsall. I wasn't the biggest fan of the pick at the time. That's one of your guys, though, Mike. Renardo Green, Dominic Puny, Malik Mustafa, Jacob Cowing, and Tatum Bethune all look solid. That's all I can ask for, really. If you can just draft a handful of players that are solid and can contribute, good draft. Good draft. I don't need superstar. I mean, obviously I would love superstars every single draft. But the 49ers for a couple of years were drafting a bunch of players who weren't making any impact at all. And it's like, man, Shanahan just doesn't trust rookies. Could this be the draft class that actually gets contribution out of the young players? If it is, I think the Niners, in terms of keeping a Super Bowl window open, I think it was huge that, I know it's really early, seem to have gotten something out of this draft class. So that's really my main takeaways from this preseason so far. Really nothing off the top of my head that really jumps out to me besides, Jair Brown has also been looking very good, but
Yep.
I know that he's looking, I've known that he was a good player last year. Why wouldn't he be a good player this upcoming year? Oh, what jumped out to me?
Mm-hmm.
The Niners in this past game trotted out Brock Purdy with like nobody else, like none of the other
I did
starters.
notice that. Yeah, I did notice that. That was definitely odd. He was out there, running out of the pocket and throwing it across the field just because he had to.
You want to talk about Minshew's numbers? Do you know Brock Purdy's numbers? He was 2 of 6 for 11 yards. And I think that was across 3 drives. And and not only that, one of the throws, he was scrambling out of the pocket, and then he was scrambling to the left and then throws across the field, and it should have been intercepted. But does that make me worry about Brock Purdy? Not really. he will have his starters, he will have his guys. I guess the only reason why it jumps out to me is like it was so un-Brock Purdy, and like why just if he's going to be playing with the starters during the season, why wouldn't you have him practicing with the starters? Like, is this some sort of test? Like, do you need to see how much he can elevate? I mean, Shanahan wasn't even calling plays either. That's another thing that I found interesting. Shanahan's not calling plays in this preseason, and that's like his one biggest strength as a coach. Is being a play caller, except with a 10-point lead in the Super Bowl, or any lead in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl for that matter. But yeah, no, like are they trying to get a like last minute test on Brock Purdy's abilities before they give him a massive contract next year?
Maybe.
Like because he was playing against the Saints defense, like how much can you elevate the guys around you? How much is it the guys around you? That was the last chance that was the only chance that they really had, except for this Raider game. But this Raider game, I think most of the starters are going to be playing. So let's talk about the Raider game. 49ers versus Raiders preseason finale preview. What a title. That's a lot of words in there. Mike, how much does this game really matter, on the Raiders side of things?
Well, on the Raiders side of things, I mean, if you want to bring up the Google Sheet, I think it could visually aid us real quick, and I will try to go quickly, and I promise not to go on any tirades on this one.
Mm-hmm.
But the only people that this game is important for are the reserves, because the starters, from what I understand, the starters are not going to be playing in this game. At least they certainly shouldn't be, So really, I think this game, if the first 2 weeks of the preseason, if the main goal was, hey, let's find our starting quarterback and maybe our starting left guard or, our third or fourth receiver, something like that, right? Our second corner. This game is strictly let's find our reserve players. Let's find our keepers on special teams. Let's find the guys that we should keep. And just, again, as a visual aid here, I did kind of adjust my Google Sheet just for this week. Maybe I'll keep it for next pod as well. But everybody in green, I consider to be a lock to make this team. Anybody in yellow, I think, is pretty much on the bubble and maybe even will make it. But for example, wide receiver, where you see 3 yellow guys, I don't think they're keeping 7 wide receivers. Right now, I see 4 green wide receivers. I think at most 2 more guys make it. So who's the odd man out here?
Honestly, with Minshew and O'Connell as the quarterback options, they should keep no receivers and keep 7 running backs.
Maybe.
I'm just playing.
Or just run Brock Bowers every single play, and then like Zamir White becomes the fullback or something. Just do it. Let's get crazy. Let's tank. No, but so I mean, really quick off each position. Like maybe if you want to zoom in so that you can only see like offense right now, and then we'll just kind of scroll to the right as we go, just so people can kind of read it. But yeah, green means I view that they are a lock to make this team. Yellow is right on the cusp. White means they got to fight. They got to really prove themselves to make this team. For one thing, I don't foresee the Raiders coming out of this preseason with only 2 quarterbacks. You have to have a third guy that, understands the offense to a degree, And I can see Carter Bradley being an obvious practice squad candidate. I don't know if Nathan Peterman is eligible. He was with the Bears last year, so he's got experience with the offensive coordinator. But from what my gut tells me is he is just a camp body to fill in this third game. Chances are Aiden O'Connell will start, and then by the I would have to imagine by the third quarter Nathan Peterman will be in. You know,
Question.
um,
Do
yep.
you think that the plan is to put Carter Bradley on the practice squad, and that might be a reason why they just had Carter Bradley handing off the ball because they didn't want him to look too good?
If he's really that good, maybe, but he's from like a small school, and I don't know. My opinion, at least watching it live, the Vikings game was, oh, they don't want him to throw the ball, not because he's too good, but because he's not good enough. That was my hunch because he was the fourth quarterback. But
Well,
hey,
no,
you never
okay,
know
but
because he.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. Not because he's like, oh my God, he's actually secretly better than Minshew and O'Connell, but no, like, oh my God,
He's just worth developing.
he's worth developing, and so a team might claim him off your practice squad.
Right. Yeah. Uh, you never know. That'd be pretty crazy. I would. I guess I'd love that, but I don't know. He did throw one pass that I noticed against the Cowboys where I was like, well, they had some pretty good zip on it, like for a fourth quarterback. Like, hey, solid. If he's a, practice squad guy, cool. But I guess where I'm getting at here, I don't want to take too long in any specific position, but just there's a rumor right now that there are teams calling the Cleveland Browns about Dorian Thompson Robinson, second year quarterback.
Yeah.
I hope the Raiders are one of them. I'll give you a couple other names of guys who have been good this preseason who maybe the Raiders should just get a feeler for. Trey Lance, we talked about him earlier. Yeah, why not? I think the
Oh,
Cowboys paid up a fourth round pick. They're not going to trade him.
yeah.
They're not going to trade him. They're trying to develop him. They're not going to, but just hey, you just got diced up by him. You might as well put out a feeler. The other guy who I think is a legitimate, like I would do it right now, although I don't think the team that he is currently with wants to move off of him. You might laugh. Maybe the viewers will laugh at this. If I were the Raiders, I would ask the Jaguars, what would it cost for Mac Jones?
I'm not laughing.
Because apparently he's having a phenomenal preseason, and he's an 15th overall pick. I don't think that's a bad guy to bring into the quarterback room. Give him some time on the bench during the regular season, and then hey, you never know. If he can be had, I would put out a feeler. But Dorian Thompson Robinson is interesting because he also has, I believe, some quarterback mobility to him. So we'll see what happens there. But moving on, Amir Abdullah, he's actually been getting a lot of touches. I figured he'd be like on the outside looking in, but I'm kind of starting to think he's going to be like the fourth running back. Actually, Dylan Lobby probably will be at first, and then he'll gradually grow into a role. Again, you have the three guys there, Wilkerson, Guyton, and Keaton at wide receiver that I think are fighting for that fourth, fifth spot, maybe even sixth.
Real quick, not that I'm anticipating that the 49ers are going to, go in this direction, but if somehow Tanner Mordecai or Joshua Dobbs does not make this team and the Raiders are able to get one of those guys, dude, take a flyer on them.
Yeah. Honestly, I'll admit I haven't seen anything that I've noticed, at least, of Tanner Mordecai. I haven't watched the Niners games deeply enough. I know Josh Dobbs was lighting it up against the Saints, though, and like you said, he should be the quarterback too for the Niners, and I don't see why he wouldn't be on this Niners roster, week one. But the Raiders will get a firsthand look at these quarterbacks. So if one of these guys does become available, yeah, absolutely.
Maybe even
Uh,
look. I mean, I feel like the Patriots are probably going to cut ties with Bailey Zappi. Like I think this is going to be the year, but I mean, if Joe Milton, I guess gets cut, they're not cutting Drake May, but if they try to stash Milton on the practice squad, maybe look there because he's at least got a big arm, and you want to pair that
yeah,
with Devontae.
yeah. I don't think they're going to let go of Milton, but I could see Zappy being an option for sure. Tight end's pretty straightforward. Can you move over to the rest of the offensive line, please?
Yes.
We do have some news that came out today, actually. Very optimistic news on my part. Colton Miller's back. Came off the pup today. And then Jackson Powers Johnson's been off the pup, been off the PUP for the past maybe almost a week now. But he's been hanging out in the red non-contact jersey until today. They weren't in pads today, but he did no longer have the red no contact jersey. So I'm hoping, or I'm thinking that he's progressing into maybe week 1 and 2. He might be inactive, but I think he'll be the starter by midseason at left guard because obviously he missed a lot of time in preseason training camp. Unfortunately, Jackson Powers Johnson, to where he's going to have a lot of catching up to do. And I think Cody Whitehair has been fine at left guard. So, obviously, Andres Pete is in yellow here. I think he's good to keep just because, hey, if you really need a left tackle to fill in, you have him along with Thayer Munford. But he also can play guard perfectly fine as well. He's just a good reserve offensive lineman to have, I think, especially right now with the question of, like, is Powers Johnson ready? Keep on just Pete. Spoiler alert, I have 40 total green players on this. I didn't count the yellow guys, but out of 53, we're looking for 13 guys. I think Andres Pete can probably be one of them, but I've seen a lot of people on Twitter complaining about Andres Pete. So I just think if you don't look at him as a left tackle, but perhaps more of an interior guy, an emergency left tackle, he's worth keeping. And then continue on down. Obviously, lots of yellow over there, but we'll do edge players first. Crosby, Terry Wilson, Wilkins, Adam Butler, they're obvious locks. Malcolm Kuntz, John Jenkins, and then I have Janarius Robinson as a lock just because no other defensive end has stuck out. Whereas in the Vikings game, like he had some nice pass rush plays in the Vikings game. And then really it's that D tackle where I'm just kind of like, who's going to step up? Who's going to be the last guy or last two guys to make this team? And then just moving on to linebacker. And honestly, we could look over at all the defensive backs too. You got David Agoha at the bottom left there. He's the Nigerian pathway program player who does not count against the 90-man roster right now. But I think he would count against the 53, so I wouldn't be shocked if he's a practice squad guy again. But at weak side linebacker, there's a really interesting this is probably my favorite competition right now, is Amari Burney versus Amari Gaynor. And for all I know, maybe both of them make the roster, but just looking at it, usually teams keep around 4, maybe 5 linebackers. I've already got 4 in green. You got Spillane, Diablo, Masterson, and then Eichenberg, who's a 4th or 5th round pick, but he's been injured as of recently. He hasn't shown up in the preseason yet, unfortunately. But they're not going to cut him, and they can't put him on IR until after the season's, after the cut down. So I feel like it's got to be either Burney or Gaynor, but I could be wrong there. I just feel like both of them have played well, and I think at least one of them deserves a roster spot. Nickelback.
My AirPods died.
All right, you're all good.
This time, both of them died at once. I'm just waiting to see.
Oh.
There we go.
Charge up. Oh, nice. All right. Obviously Nate Hobbs, but then Devonshire and Woo Governor are lined up at the nickel spot behind Nate Hobbs. We'll see if they keep one of them. Devonshire is the 7th round pick, and Woo Governor, he was like the first reserve defensive back to come on the field when like Jack Jones and company were still on the field against Trey Lance and the Cowboys. So Woo Governor is like a sneaky look out for him sort of guy. At corner, boundary corner, I only have 3 guys right now, like as obvious keeps. Brandon Faison once again has been injured like the entire preseason. I don't know what happened to him. It went from like, oh, he's probably the number 2 to like, well, he's not playing. I don't even know if he's making the team. This would be the position where I'm like, right now, I'm signing a guy. Adoree Jackson. The Vikings just signed, I'm forgetting his name, but, the Cowboys'
Stephon
oldest
Gilmore.
corner, Stephon Gilmore. Thank you. So, cornerback options are dwindling. Uh, I
They're
think,
about to be abundant pretty soon when the Niners cut down their team.
and that's another positive to playing the Niners is, and I know when we first talked about this roster, the Niners roster was, man, you guys have a lot of depth at corner. Like, we're going to play you guys last in the preseason and we're going to get a firsthand look at it. If a guy like, I don't know if you would say he's getting cut or something or at risk of it, but ex Raiders corner,
Rock Ya-Sin,
Rock Ya-Sin.
he's
Is he
probably
playing
going to get
good? Oh, wow. So, I mean, if he were to play good
just
against the
because there's so
Raiders,
much competition.
yeah. So, I mean, if he plays good against the Raiders, hey, bring him back. I enjoyed having Rock Ya-Sin on the Raiders. I thought he was a good second corner. So, I mean, now he's probably a little later in the stage where maybe he's a fourth or fifth, but still, it's better than an injured Brandon Faison or just an unknown guy, you know? And then safety is pretty self-explanatory, but I think you got three guys there that are battling for the last safety spot on the team. But again, special teams plays a large part of, the depth of the team. A lot of these guys that make this team need to prove themselves in special teams. So as far as the Raiders versus Niner game, it's really just that. It's who's going to stand out, who's going to earn a spot and make the 53.
Cool if I stop sharing.
Absolutely.
I'm going to talk about like what's at stake for the 49ers in this game. And really, I mean, clearly every team wants to leave the game healthy. But I'm not going to show the entire spreadsheet, but I'm just kind of glancing over it a little bit. I think I feel like the decision has probably already been made between, like for quarterback 2, similar to like last season. But that situation was just kind of unique with the whole, Trey Lance versus Sam Darnold thing, or just Trey Lance in general. But I mean, really, I think Isaac Orendo is, I want to say, projected to finally suit up and play in this game. So it'll be big to see if he, makes the team, because if he gets put on the practice squad, he might be a guy who might get claimed to another team because of, just his measurables at the combine. You know what I mean? Like he's big and he's big and he's fast. Another thing is I'm pretty confident that the wide receivers, granted, if Brandon Ayuk and the 49ers can come to a deal, the wide receivers are going to be Debo, Brandon Ayuk, Jennings, Pearsall, and I think Jacob Cowing has earned his spot on this team. I think he would probably be too good to probably stash, and he's going to be under contract for 4 years.
Yeah.
The final spot, honestly, I think is probably going to be between Ronnie Bell and Chris Conley. And I would almost prefer to have Chris Conley because I think Chris Conley is a better player. I think Danny Gray's done. I could see a scenario where Trent Taylor makes this team, but I don't think that he should, if that makes sense. Like I could see a scenario just in the fact that Shanahan favors veterans and Trent Taylor has history with the players on this team and like they're there's good chemistry there, but I think Chris Conley is a better receiver than Trent Taylor at this, right now. And then in terms of like battles, I think, like I said earlier, I think Dominic Puny is locking in that right guard spot. Let's see. Corner is going to be another thing. I think corners that are for sure making the team: Charvarius Ward, Diamador Lenore, Renardo Green, and Darrell Luter Jr. Every other spot left, I think, is honestly, I think it's up for grabs. We'll see about Sam Womack. We'll see about Isaac Yiadom, Chase Lucas, Rockison. I think he would probably be an odd man out. I don't necessarily want to see Ambry Thomas back with the 49ers because he has looked bad, especially in like the first preseason game. But, he's always there, but he just has zero ball skills. Pause. But yeah, in terms of linebackers, Curtis Robinson's looking pretty good. Tatum Bethune is looking good. I think D Winters. Oh, I didn't even talk about D Winters, dude. D Winters looks like a stud linebacker.
You know what? Not to cut you off of the Niners, but I noticed I looked at like my notes on my phone after I got done talking about the Raiders, and I realized I completely forgot about DJ Glaze, the 3rd-round pick for the Raiders. Just a quick little look out for DJ Glaze at right tackle. He, for all we know, he might actually beat out Thayer Munford and be the starting right tackle. But continue.
So he might glaze him.
He might give him that glaze.
Gotta glaze him. But yeah, other than that, I think most of the decisions have probably been made. I know the starters are going to get, a little bit of run, against the Raiders. In terms of an outcome for the game, I really don't think it matters. There are people who care about wins in the preseason, and I'm just like, I only care about did my team get better? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and how healthy do we remain?
Mm-hmm. Papa J says, "What up, faithful?" He's talking to me, Mike. You're not one of the faithful. All right, you go back to your black hole. We don't, hey, Papa J, we don't associate with this guy, right? Right. I don't know, Papa J. Why don't I ask you, what do you want to see from this final preseason game? We appreciate you for tuning in, by the way. While I wait for your comment, 100 and a thumbs up. Please consider liking and subscribing. We take comments. If you want to leave a comment on any of our videos or any of our live streams, we do take time to read and reply. So, we appreciate you popping in. But yeah, man, I just take a look at the game and I'm just like, did my team get better? That's the most important thing. In the regular season, yeah, it's all about winning. It's not about, did we lose? But at least we got better. Papa J says, I want to see what Tanner is all about. I do too. I've heard nothing but great things about Tanner Mordecai literally throughout training camp. I've heard Larry Krueger kind of prop up Tanner Mordecai. And if there's one thing that I can give respect to Larry Krueger on, is that he was like the only person who was, he was like the first person to say how good he thought Brock Purdy was. And, he thought Brock Purdy could be a starter in the NFL. And, sure enough, Brock Purdy might be our franchise quarterback. I think probably is, but, we'll see if the 49ers are going to penny pinch him and if he's, if it's going to be a huge mess the way that the Brandon Ayuk contract negotiation has been this offseason. But yeah, Larry has some good insights. Shout out to Larry Krueger. He's one of the great 49er content creators, and I think he's back with KNBR now. So, I mean, I would love to have Larry Krueger on the show eventually. Maybe I'll form that connection. Papa J, next week we should be having a special guest. I'll kind of spoil it. We should be having Grant Cohn on again. Grant was on our show back in episode 7. So if you want to check that out, that was already from a year ago. After the 49ers did their joint practices and preseason game with the Raiders. It's funny how a year has gone by with the podcast and we're kind of like in the same in the same boat that we were last year, except without the joint practices. But like, we're ending the no, the Niners started the preseason against the Raiders. Now they're ending the preseason against the Raiders. Right? Mike?
Last year?
Last year, the first preseason
You're
game was
saying
against the Raiders. Right? Now
I don't remember, but probably.
Mhm. Papa J says, I also want to see if we improved in tackling from last week, because in our defense plays, if our defense plays that way through the season, we will not make it to the playoffs. I think it'll be cleaned up. Like, honestly, the preseason, like I was saying earlier, I don't know if you caught it. The preseason, I've kind of like not lost faith in it, but I just think that it's not as important as I think, we're all making it out to be. Or, last year, what's so funny, Mike?
Nothing.
I think it's
I'll tell
important for
you.
players. I think it's important for players to get reps, and to get back into like molding their bodies to get ready for a long season of football. But aside from that, when the team isn't doing well, I think that it gets cleaned up by the time the regular season rolls around, and that's what we saw last year with the 49ers. So, like everybody was like thinking, man, is this team going to regress? And then the Niners started off like 5-0. So,
Oh yeah. I didn't want to cut you off on this, answering the question. I don't want to take away from it. I was just laughing at myself because I can see how physically tired I am right now. I was like, I keep yawning, and I really don't mean to.
Papa J, do you see what I have to deal with over here?
Yeah. Sorry,
The nation, the sleepy nation. Yeah. But that was our final topic of the day. I just want to see improvement. Preseason is all about improvement, getting right for the season. It's not about winning and losing, but I do know that knowing 49er and Raider fans, people, some people are just going to make a big deal out of who won or not, and I'm just not one of those people for the preseason.
Hopefully it's like the Battle of the Bay, and it's just like, well, no, I don't want it to be low scoring. Hopefully it's like back and forth, but then at the end, somebody just barely inches it out, or like comes down to a 2-point conversion or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, this guy with the team he's rooting for is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. You know what? Maybe I do want to win. No. But honestly, yeah, like I said, it'll be good to see Tanner Mordecai. I hope we see more of him than we've seen in the first two preseason games. We didn't see him at all in the first one. And then, we saw him a little bit in this past one. But Josh Dobbs, I think, looked really good. But I mean, how many times do I have to say it on this podcast, Mike? Like, Dobbs is just a different type of runner. I think he's a pretty good quarterback. If the Niners, for whatever reason, let him go, like maybe Shanahan feels a little bit more comfortable with Brandon Allen, and they let go of Josh Dobbs, or put him on the practice squad, or whatever, the Raiders should be first in line to snatch him.
That pass that he threw to Cowing, what was that, at the end of the first half with like 18 seconds?
I think that was the end of the first half. The one where Cowing like tiptoed to get his feet in bounds. That was awesome.
Yeah, on both of their parts. That was a phenomenal pass. And
then correct me if I'm wrong, but it was 4th and goal, and Dobbs had to get in the end zone, and he did. He beat one defender and was able to, get in. And I almost had no doubt in my mind. I'm like, if Dobbs keeps it, he's getting in.
Yeah.
Dobbs is like Cam Newton, but 2 steps back. Yeah, I'd say Cam Newton was a much more dynamic player, in his prime. But I would say if you want to compare Dobbs to like late career, like after the Super Bowl Cam Newton, maybe. But Cam Newton was just so much bigger. And I think Newton took some hits, man.
Yeah. Yeah, he was definitely different.
He would get beat up, dude. That's why his prime didn't last very long.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Josh Dobbs over here is like astronaut in the off season.
Yeah.
But like, during the season, I guess he doesn't have to worry about it from the sideline. At least this year. But anyways, Papa J, thank you so much again, for commenting on the stream. And then I know a couple of others popped in a little bit earlier. The numbers, Raiders Rebel and Pia, for stopping by, sharing your thoughts. Anybody who tuned in, I think this was a pretty good show. Like I said, we're going to be dropping the video of us at the final Battle of the Bay that we went to on Sunday. So that should be a little bit of a change of pace of what you're normally used to from seeing on this channel. Papa J says, I got you guys on my notifications, so this next time I will catch you from the beginning. We should be going live next Monday evening. And, like I said, as long as nothing changes, we should be having Grant Cohn back on. Grant has been very generous, every single time I met him, he's always very generous with his time. He's a really cool dude. And yeah, no, I really like Grant, so I appreciate that he'll take more time to come back on the silver and gold. So, it's pretty cool. But anyways, I hope everybody has a great night. Mike, do you have anything, that you want to say before we get out of here?
Just win, baby. Big game on Friday. Let's go.